Welcome back. Tonight, we're drifting slowly into the complete lore of Springfield, the animated town's yellow-skinned chaos that has hummed under television glow since 1989, where Homer Simpson's nuclear family dysfunction echoes through 742 Evergreen Terrace, which Matt Groening sketched in a Fox Network lobby during the Tracy Ullman show's commercial break negotiations, born from his own frustration with conventional sitcom formulas and naming the family after his own relatives to avoid legal complications. Animated on crude cells for variety show interstitials, The Simpsons promised audiences brief, animated disruptions amid live musical acts and comedy sketches before Fox executives commissioned full episodes at midnight creative sessions. From the Tracy Ullman Show shorts of 1987 under grainy analog broadcast to high-definition widescreen animation streaming on Disney Plus, amid the franchise's 750-plus episode archive and 35-season persistence. We'll trace every iteration of this animated institution piece by piece. This is the story of how rabbit-eared sketches became television's longest-running family and how Springfield left a mark that still echoes in the franchise's hidden callbacks and Treehouse of Horror segments. Whether you're uncovering this story for the first time, returning to a world you thought you knew, or letting the echoes of its animation history carry you towards sleep, this video will guide you through the full unbroken timeline. Before we begin, feel free to like and subscribe, but only if you enjoy this kind of slow, immersive storytelling that drifts through the edges of memory and animation history. And let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is for you. It's always haunting and beautiful to see the same story weaving through different corners of the world, one quiet night at a time. Let's begin. The Tracy Ullman Show hums under studio lights as the Simpson family assumes their first animated forms in 48 crudely drawn shorts, yellow skin absorbing camera flashes with layered black outlines, tracing the contours, and exaggerated overbites defining each character. April 19th, 1987 marks the premiere of Good Night, where Marge and Homer attempt bedtime rituals amid Bart's stalling tactics and Lisa's existential questions about mortality that stretch a simple tucking-in sequence into animated chaos. Floppy hair droops slightly forward on Marge's towering blue sculpture, framing Homer's receding hairline, Bart's spiky crown, Lisa's pearled necklace, and Maggie's pacifier sucking that persists through silent observation. Families cluster around television sets during commercial breaks, drawn by 30-second to 3-minute animated interruptions that fill the variety show's transitions between musical acts and Ullman's comedy sketches before the host returns to claim studio attention. Matt Groening sketches these forms in a Fox Network lobby during contract negotiations, naming characters after his own family members to avoid legal complications with his Life in Hell comic strip rabbits. Homer borrows his father's name. Marge derives from Margaret, his mother. Lisa and Maggie claim his sisters. Bart emerges as anagram for brat, the sole invention among familial appropriations. This rapid character generation stems from meeting urgency, where executives demand original animated content for Ullman's second season, compressing development timelines that traditional animation studios require for model sheets and personality documentation. Groening's crude sketches bypass refinement protocols, delivering raw character essence directly to Klasky Csupo's animation teams in Los Angeles. Animation cells render through Klasky Csupo's distinctive crude aesthetic, where thick black outlines dominate character forms, and limited frame counts create jerky motion that contrasts the smooth Disney polish audiences associate with theatrical animation. Yellow skin tones distinguish the family from realistic flesh, establishing the show's cartoon identity through color choices that persist across franchise iterations. Overbites extend unnaturally from every mouth. Eyes bulge in simple circles. Marge's hair defies gravity through geometric simplicity. Background details remain minimal, focusing attention on character motion and dialogue delivery, where Dan Castellaneta's Homer Grunt and Nancy Cartwright's Bart Sass establish vocal identities that survive the transition to full episodes. 48 shorts accumulate across 3 Tracy Ullman seasons from 1987 through 1989, testing character dynamics and audience reception before network executives recognize broader potential. Character personalities emerge through these interstitial experiments, where Homer's incompetence, Marge's patience, Bart's rebellion, Lisa's intelligence, and Maggie's silence establish family hierarchy and conflict patterns. Tone shifts between shorts, some emphasizing slapstick violence while others explore domestic tension through exaggerated parenting failures and sibling rivalries that mirror American family dysfunction. Voice direction remains loose, permitting improvisation that tightens during later production cycles. This positioning within variety show breaks optimizes audience reach, yellow forms contrasting the live-action segments and musical numbers to sustain experimental edges. Before Fox Broadcasting, executives commissioned full episodes at midnight creative sessions. Fox Broadcasting falls silent post-Ullman as The Simpsons disengages from variety show format around December 1989, initiating their half-hour debut through the living room where checkered floor tiles stand illuminated under Christmas tree lights. December 17, 1989 marks Simpsons roasting on an open fire's premiere, the franchise's first 30-minute episode dispatching the family from interstitial status into primetime scheduling, where complete narrative arcs replace fragmented sketches. Homer Simpson discovers his Christmas bonus, eliminated through Mr. Burns' corporate cost-cutting, forcing desperate employment at Springfield Mall's Santa Village, where he endures child mockery and minimum wage humiliation. Bart's letter to Santa surfaces at the mall, revealing the boy's request for a tattoo removal that depleted Marge's Christmas savings, compounding financial pressure that drives Homer towards Springfield Downs racetrack on Christmas Eve. Production urgency accelerates this episode's completion as the intended Season 1 premiere, The Telltale Head, suffers animation delays that pushed the Christmas special forward despite its intended 8th position in broadcast order. Animation quality improves from Ullman's crude cells through Klasky Csupo's expanded budgets and timeframes, yielding smoother character motion and detailed background renderings where Springfield materializes as a complete town rather than minimal sketch settings. The living room couch establishes its central position. Kitchen scenes introduce appliance details. Exterior shots frame 742 Evergreen Terrace within neighborhood context. These spatial expansions ground the family in geographic reality that Ullman's shorts never required. Santa's little helper enters franchise continuity during the episode's climax, where Homer's losing bet on race dog number 8 leads to the Greyhound's abandonment by his disgusted owner at the racetrack's exit. Bart and Homer return home with the dog instead of presents, transforming financial failure into emotional resolution, where Marge declares the pet the best gift possible. This tonal shift from cynical desperation to sentimental redemption establishes the show's balance between satirical edge and traditional sitcom warmth that defines early seasons. James L. Brooks, Matt Groening, and Sam Simon's collaborative vision solidifies here through expanded runtime that permits character depth beyond Ullman's rapid-fire joke delivery. Network reception confirms viability as ratings demonstrate audience appetite for animated primetime content aimed at adults rather than children, distinguishing The Simpsons from Saturday morning cartoon conventions. Christmas special positioning assigns the family this premiere slot, freeing winter scheduling for immediate fan attachment, where couch gags rumble through empty primetime frames before network executives lock commitment at season orders. Springfield hums under animated skies as Season 1 episodes materialize across 13 weeks. Homer's blue-collar chaos anchoring the Springfield nuclear power plant, while Bart's catchphrases echo through Springfield Elementary school halls, lined with faded safety posters and Principal Skinner's disciplinary notices. January 14, 1990 marks the true series premiere following the Christmas special's success, where Bart the Genius opens the season proper with intelligence test cheating that places the underachiever in gifted programs beyond his comprehension. Episodes accumulate weekly through May 1990, establishing core Springfield locations and recurring characters that transform the town from minimal backdrop into detailed ecosystem. Moe's Tavern emerges during Homer's Odyssey, where the bartender's gruff hospitality anchors Homer's drinking rituals. Ned Flanders materializes as the perfect neighbor whose evangelical cheerfulness grates against Homer's slovenly existence. Mr. Burns and Smithers claim the nuclear power plant's executive offices, where managerial incompetence permits Homer's safety inspector employment, despite total disqualification. Character introductions cluster throughout the 13-episode run, where the Telltale Head establishes Bart's conscience through statue vandalism that horrifies Springfield, while Moaning Lisa explores depression through the daughter's saxophone, melancholy and bleeding gums, Murphy's jazz mentorship. Animation quality fluctuates across episodes as Klasky Csupo struggles with overseas production coordination, where South Korean animation studios render American storyboards with varying fidelity to model sheets. Some episodes display crude motion and off-model faces. Others achieve smoother consistency. These technical inconsistencies stem from production timelines that demand weekly output without sufficient quality control feedback loops between Los Angeles writing rooms and Seoul animation facilities. Catchphrase establishment occurs organically through character repetition, where Bart's "eat my shorts" and "don't have a cow, man" proliferate across schoolyard scenes, while Homer's frustrated "dough" punctuates every failure and setback. Dan Castellaneta develops the signature grunt through abbreviated pronunciation of "dough" from James Finlayson's longer expression in Laurel and Hardy films, compressing the sound into single-syllable exasperation that writers begin scripting as "annoyed grunt" in early scripts. Nancy Cartwright's Bart voice sharpens from Ullman's shriller delivery into the recognizable rasp that merchandising exploits through t-shirt slogans and toy pull strings. These vocal refinements occur through weekly recording sessions where actors adjust performances based on director feedback and character evolution. Cultural controversy ignites during Season 1's broadcast run, where educators and parent groups condemn Bart Simpson as negative role model, whose underachievement and disrespect toward authority figures undermine traditional family values. Underachiever and proud of it, t-shirts proliferate through unlicensed merchandising that schools ban from campuses nationwide. Time magazine features Bart on its cover. The Parents Television Council denounced the show's satirical edge. Network executives navigate backlash, while ratings demonstrate commercial viability that overrides moral panic. Fox Broadcasting positions the controversy as marketing opportunity, where outrage amplifies visibility among target demographics seeking alternatives to wholesome sitcom conventions that dominate primetime schedules through The Cosby Show's family-friendly dominance. Season 1 establishes the animated family archetype echoed in franchise variants. Nuclear dysfunction persisting as satirical vessel across animated decades, where primetime audiences perceive relatable chaos beneath yellow surfaces. Post-season renewal triggers expanded production protocols, dispatching writers from family-focused episodes into deliberate community building that traces Springfield's complete ecosystem. Fox Broadcasting welcomes expanded production orders under network confidence as Season 2 claims 22 episodes, with animation refinement where Klasky Supo's crude outlines yield to smoother character designs amid Springfield's population boom, introducing Bleeding Gums Murphy, Lionel Hutz, and Troy McClure into recurring rotation. October 11th, 1990 marks the season premiere with Bart Gets an F, where the underachiever faces retention in 4th grade through academic failures that test family dynamics and challenge his slacker identity. Episode count doubles from Season 1's 13, permitting deeper character exploration and expanded Springfield geography, where new locations materialize weekly. Dr. Hibbert emerges as the family physician, whose inappropriate laughter punctuates medical consultations. Comic Book Guy claims his store as nerd culture repository. Lionel Hutz ambulance chases through legal incompetence that Phil Hartman voices with sleazy desperation. Animation quality improvements stem from increased budgets and refined production pipelines, where overseas studios receive clearer model sheets and more rigorous quality control that minimizes off-model frames and jerky motion. Character designs simplify from Season 1's occasionally detailed renderings into standardized forms that permit faster animation cycles and consistent appearance across episodes. Color palettes brighten, background details sharpen. These technical refinements create visual polish that distances Season 2 from Ullman's crude origins while maintaining the show's cartoon identity against realistic sitcom competition. James L. Brooks and Sam Simon's showrunning collaboration peaks here through balanced episode selection that alternates character-focused stories with satirical Springfield commentary. Treehouse of Horror debuts on October 25, 1990, as the franchise's first Halloween special, where anthology format suspends canonical rules through 3 horror comedy segments. Bad Dream House parodies haunted residence tropes. Hungry Are the Damned presents alien abduction as misunderstood hospitality. The Raven adapts Edgar Allan Poe's poem through Bart and Homer casting that juxtaposes Gothic literature with cartoon aesthetics. Non-canonical status permits character deaths and supernatural scenarios without episodic consequence, establishing annual tradition that persists through 34 subsequent Halloween specials. Title. Sequences vary from standard opening through horror theme variations, where couch gags transform into monster attacks and gravestones replace credit scrolling. This format experimentation grants writers creative freedom beyond Springfield's realistic constraints, where weekly episodes maintain internal consistency that anthology Horror segments ignore. Cultural phenomenon status achieves during Season 2's broadcast run, where merchandise sales explode beyond t-shirt controversy into comprehensive product lines encompassing toys, video games, lunchboxes, and publishing deals. Bart Simpson doll's voice catchphrases through pull-string mechanisms. The Simpsons Sing the Blues album reaches number 3 on Billboard 200. Video game adaptations appear on Nintendo and Sega platforms. International broadcasting expands the show's reach beyond American audiences into European and Asian markets, where dubbed translations adapt cultural references and character names for local comprehension. Emmy nominations accumulate, where the show wins Outstanding Animated Program in 1990, the category's inaugural year, validating animation's primetime viability against industry skepticism. George H.W. Bush's 1992 speech declares, "America needs to be closer to the Waltons and a little less like The Simpsons," positioning the animated family as cultural threat to traditional values. Writers respond through episode where the Simpsons move across the street from the Bush family in fictional retribution. This political acknowledgement elevates the show from entertainment product into cultural institution, whose satirical commentary attracts presidential attention and positions Springfield as lens for examining American society. Treehouse of Horror establishes the Halloween tradition, echoed across subsequent annual specials. Horror anthology segments threading through the franchise's seasonal cadence, where format breaks permit creative exploration beyond Springfield's realistic boundaries. Springfield's creative corridors pulse with writer room energy during seasons 3 through 8 as the Golden Age materializes across 138 episodes, where Mike Rice, Al Jean, John Swartzwelder, and Conan O'Brien craft the franchise's most revered installments amid peak animation refinement and satirical precision. Seasons spanning 1991 through 1997 accumulate critical consensus as the show's creative zenith, where writing quality, animation consistency, and cultural relevance converge into television achievement that later seasons struggle to maintain. Writer room legends emerge through these years, where John Swartzwelder's prolific output generates dozens of classic episodes from his remote typewriter, while Conan O'Brien's Harvard wit sharpens satirical edges before late-night television claims him. George Meyer's dark sensibility influenced the show's cynical undertones. Greg Daniels establishes character depth. Each writer's distinct voice contributes to collective excellence that showrunners synthesize into consistent franchise identity. Iconic episodes cluster throughout these golden seasons, where Marge vs. the Monorail presents Leonard Nimoy, narrated satire of civic corruption and snake oil salesmanship through Lyle Lanley's musical deception. Cape Fear extends Sideshow Bob's vendetta into Cape Fear Homage, where Kelsey Grammer's theatrical villainy culminates in rake-stepping sight gag, repeated across multiple impacts for extended comedic timing. Homer's Enemy introduces Frank Grimes as reality check, where competent employees' descent into madness mirrors audience frustration with Homer's consequence-free incompetence. 22. Short films. About Springfield experiments with anthology structure that grants supporting characters spotlight episodes, independent of Simpson family focus. Mr. Plow establishes Homer's brief business success. Last Exit to Springfield depicts union organizing through dental plan negotiations. You Only Move Twice features Albert Brooks as Hank Scorpio, beloved guest villain whose cheerful management style masks global terrorism ambitions. Animation studio transition occurs during Season 4's production, when Klasky Supo's contract expires, and Film Roman assumes animation duties, beginning with Camp Crusty in 1992. Visual style maintains consistency through model sheet adherence and character design preservation that minimizes transition disruption. Film Roman's Los Angeles location improves communication between writers and animators, where previous overseas coordination created feedback delays. Color saturation increases slightly. Character motion smooths further. Background details accumulate greater complexity. These incremental improvements refine the show's visual identity without dramatic stylistic shifts that would alienate existing audiences accustomed to established aesthetic conventions. Celebrity guest stars establish systematic pattern during Golden Age seasons, where notable performers voice Springfield residents or play themselves in meta-commentary episodes. Michael Jackson's pseudonymous appearance as Leon Kompowski in Stark Raving Dad launches guest star tradition, despite contractual restrictions preventing official credit. Dustin Hoffman voices Mr. Bergstrom under Sam Eddick's pseudonym in Lisa's Substitute, delivering emotional performance that elevates character-focused storytelling. Albert Brooks returns multiple times, voicing different characters, where his improvisational skills generate extended scenes that writers preserve in final cuts. Phil Hartman's recurring roles as Lionel Hutz and Troy McClure cement his legacy before 1998, tragedy forces character retirement. These celebrity integrations enhance episodes when performers serve character needs rather than simply appearing as themselves for promotional value. Emmy recognition accumulates throughout Golden Age run, where outstanding animated program wins become routine expectation rather than surprising validation. Critical praise positions. The Simpsons as television's smartest comedy, where satirical commentary targets political corruption, corporate greed, religious hypocrisy, and cultural absurdity through animated format that permits exaggeration beyond live-action constraints. Academic analysis begins during this period, where scholars examine the show's philosophical references, literary allusions, and social critique through papers and books that elevate animated sitcom into legitimate cultural text worthy of serious study. Harvard Lampoon writers populate the staff. Intellectual density increases through classical music references, obscure historical allusions, and mathematical jokes that reward educated viewers while remaining accessible to casual audiences. Character development deepens during these seasons, where supporting cast members receive spotlight episodes that expand their personalities beyond single-trait caricatures. Moe's suicidal tendencies and romantic failures add pathos to bartender appearances. Principal Skinner's Vietnam service and domineering mother create psychological complexity. Apu's immigrant experience and arranged marriage examine cultural assimilation. These character explorations balance the show's satirical edge with emotional grounding that prevents complete cynicism from overwhelming narrative accessibility. Homer's characterization maintains incompetence while preserving underlying decency that justifies Marge's loyalty and audience sympathy, despite his repeated failures and selfishness. Cultural consistency and emotional grounding that earlier seasons balanced carefully. The Principal and the Pauper generates particular controversy during Season 9's September 1997 broadcast, where Seymour Skinner's identity revelation as imposter Armin Tamzarian retroactively undermines character history through twists that fans and writers later disavow. Episode sparks debate about canonical boundaries and character integrity, where shocking revelations prioritize temporary surprise over long-term narrative coherence. Matt Groening and several staff writers publicly criticized the episode. The show's willingness to reset and ignore the revelation establishes precedent for selective continuity, where controversial episodes disappear from character memory without acknowledgement. This creative misstep highlights the risks of innovation within established franchise, where audience investment in character histories constrains acceptable narrative experimentation. Celebrity guest appearances increase in frequency and prominence during Scully era, where episodes structure narratives around famous performers rather than integrating them organically into Springfield stories. The show's cultural cachet attracts A-list talent-seeking Simpsons credentials, but systematic guest star deployment dilutes focus on core family dynamics and supporting cast development. Musical guests perform extended sequences. Athletes voice themselves in sports episodes. Actors appear in storylines designed specifically to showcase their participation, rather than serving broader narrative purposes. This shift toward celebrity spectacle over character-driven storytelling marks departure from Golden Age priorities, where guest stars enhanced episodes without dominating them. Animation upgrades occurred during this period, where digital ink and paint processes replaced traditional cell animation, beginning with Season 14's 2002 production. Computer coloring permits more complex shading and lighting effects. Digital compositing enables camera movements and visual effects impossible under analog production constraints. Character designs maintain consistency through digital model libraries that standardize appearance across episodes and prevent off-model renderings that plagued early seasons. These technical improvements modernize the show's visual presentation while maintaining recognizable aesthetic continuity that preserves franchise identity across production methodology transitions. Commercial success continues despite creative criticism, where ratings remain strong, and merchandising revenues sustain Fox Broadcasting's commitment to indefinite renewal. The Simpsons establishes itself as corporate asset too valuable to cancel regardless of quality fluctuations, where brand recognition and international syndication generate profits independent of critical reception.
Scully era establishes the divisive trajectory echoed in franchise longevity debates, creative shifts persisting as nostalgic fans mark
Season 8's conclusion as canonical endpoint, while casual audiences maintain viewership through evolving Springfield absurdism. Al Jean returns to showrunner duties post-Scully, reclaiming Season 13 with attempts to recalibrate tone amid industry transitions, where The Simpsons movie development begins parallel to episodic production schedules. Jean's second tenure lacks Golden Age consistency, but restores character-focused storytelling and reduces Homer's jerk-ass tendencies through conscious effort to address fan criticisms while maintaining ratings viability. Writer room composition shifts as original staff members pursue other projects, and new voices integrate into established franchise, where maintaining Simpson identity while introducing fresh perspectives creates tension between innovation and tradition. The show navigates its third decade through these adjustments, balancing legacy expectations against creative evolution necessary to sustain relevance across generational audience turnover. 20th Century Fox Studios illuminate under-production lights as The Simpsons movie materializes across 4 years of development, where Matt Groening, James L. Brooks, and Al Jean script Springfield's theatrical debut amid continued television production demands and animation studio coordination between Film Roman and Rough Draft Studios. July 27th, 2007. Release date marks the franchise's first theatrical expansion after 18 years of television existence, where widescreen format and feature-length runtime permit narrative scope impossible within half-hour episodic constraints. Development timeline extends from 2003 through 2007 as writers struggle to craft story worthy of theatrical treatment while maintaining television production schedules that cannot pause for movie focus. Multiple script revisions cycle through premises before settling on environmental disaster plot where Homer's pig waste pollution forces EPA dome imprisonment over Springfield. Plot mechanics center Homer's adoption of Spider Pig, whose waste accumulation in Silo Homer dumps into Lake Springfield despite environmental protection efforts that Marge and Lisa champion through community activism. Pollution triggers mutation crisis, where three-eyed fish proliferate, and water toxicity reaches catastrophic levels, prompting EPA intervention under Russ Cargill's authoritarian command. Government dome seals Springfield from outside world. Simpson family escapes to Alaska, where Homer's selfishness fractures family unity until redemption arc motivates his return to save the town from EPA's planned annihilation. Narrative structure follows traditional hero's journey framework where Homer's flaws create crisis, exile forces reflection, and return achieves growth. That sitcom format typically resets weekly without lasting consequence. Animation quality leaps beyond television standards through theatrical budget allocation, permitting detailed backgrounds, complex character animation, and cinematic visual effects that television schedules cannot accommodate. Rough Draft Studios contributes supplementary animation to Film Roman's primary production, where expanded time frames allow frame-by-frame refinement impossible under weekly television deadlines. Character designs maintain television consistency while benefiting from theatrical resolution, where subtle details and fluid motion enhance visual presentation without alienating franchise aesthetic. Color palettes remain bright. Yellow skin tones persist. Springfield's geography maintains deliberate inconsistency despite theatrical scope that could impose definitive spatial relationships. Box office performance exceeds expectations, where a $75 million production budget generates $527 million worldwide gross that validates theatrical viability and justifies development investment. Critical reception remains positive, where reviewers praise the film's ability to sustain feature-length narrative without diluting television's satirical edge or forcing artificial epic scope onto inherently domestic premise. Spider-Pig cultural moment penetrates broader consciousness through song parody of Spider-Man theme that merchandising exploits through toy lines and internet memes. The film's commercial and critical success confirms the franchise's cinematic potential, while television production continues uninterrupted, where episodic storytelling resumes without acknowledging movie events beyond occasional reference. Voice actor salary negotiations delay production at various stages, where primary cast members leverage franchise dependency to secure compensation, increases reflecting the show's profitability. Dan Castellaneta, Julie Kavner, Nancy Cartwright, Yeardley Smith, Hank Azaria,
and Harry Shearer collectively bargained for pay equity with executive producer salaries that network initially resists before compromising to preserve theatrical release schedule. These labor tensions underscore the show's economic value, where voice performances constitute irreplaceable franchise elements that casting replacements cannot duplicate without audience rebellion. Theatrical expansion confirms franchise's cinematic viability, silver screen adaptation echoing television DNA while amplifying animation budgets, and narrative scope for feature-length Springfield documentation until credits roll and episodic production reclaims focus. Springfield's animation cells dissolve into digital rendering as Season 20 materializes in 720p high definition, where 16:9 aspect ratios expand visual space amid traditional 4:3 nostalgists mourning cropped compositions that defined the franchise's first 19 seasons and 418 episodes. January 2009 marks HD transition, where widescreen format adoption aligns The Simpsons with industry broadcasting standards that abandon analog 4:3 constraints for digital widescreen accommodation. Visual composition adjusts to expanded horizontal space, where character positioning and
background details adapt to fill additional frame width that previous aspect ratio never accommodated. Some episodes crop vertically to maintain character scale. Others redesign compositions entirely. These format adjustments generate fan debate, where purists argue lost vertical space compromises visual integrity, while pragmatists accept industry evolution as an inevitable necessity. Animation style modernization continues digital transition, where computer rendering smooths character motion and enables lighting effects impossible under analog production methodology. Digital ink and paint processes initiated during Season 14 reach full implementation, where traditional cell animation disappears completely from production pipeline. Character designs maintain core identity through digital model libraries that preserve recognizable features while benefiting from technical refinements. Background details achieve greater complexity. Color gradations expand beyond analog limitations. Visual effects incorporate subtle shadows and highlights that add dimensionality to flat character designs without violating cartoon aesthetic conventions. Disney acquisition of Fox Broadcasting's entertainment assets occurs on March 20th, 2019, where $71.3 billion transaction transfers The Simpsons ownership from 20th Century Fox to Walt Disney Company, amid broader media consolidation that concentrates content libraries under streaming platform strategies. The Simpsons becomes Disney intellectual property despite franchise's satirical history, targeting Disney corporate practices and theme park commercialism through episodes like the Itchy and Scratchy and Poochie show and Special Edna. Corporate synergy tensions emerge where new ownership potentially constrains satirical targets that now include parent company operations. Showrunners navigate these political complexities while maintaining creative independence that Disney largely preserves to avoid franchise disruption. Disney Plus streaming launch on November 12, 2019 positions The Simpsons as platform anchor, where complete series archive attracts subscribers seeking comprehensive access to 700-plus episode catalog. Initial aspect ratio controversy emerges when Disney Plus crops early 4.3 episodes to 16.9 widescreen that obscures visual gags and disrupts original compositions. Fan backlash prompts Disney's commitment to restore original aspect ratios through technical updates that accommodate viewer preference. Streaming accessibility transforms the franchise's distribution model, where syndication and scheduled broadcasting yield to on-demand viewing that permits binge-watching and selective episode curation impossible under traditional television scheduling constraints. Production continues through Season 35 and beyond, where Fox Broadcasting maintains new episode orders despite Disney ownership and streaming focus. Voice actors age noticeably through vocal performances where Dan Castellaneta's Homer Rasp deepens and July Kavner's Marge Croak strains under decades of character maintenance. Physical aging affects vocal quality, where youthful energy diminishes into weary delivery that inadvertently adds texture to character performances. Writers acknowledge longevity through meta-commentary episodes that reference the show's persistence beyond reasonable endpoints. Guinness World Records accumulate where The Simpsons claims longest-running American sitcom, longest-running American animated program, and most guest stars featured in television series among numerous categorical achievements. These milestone recognitions cement cultural legacy while raising questions about creative necessity versus commercial obligation, where indefinite renewal serves corporate interests more than artistic vision. HD Era establishes the franchise's streaming permanence. Digital archives ensuring Springfield's accessibility across platforms, where Disney Plus libraries house complete runs alongside continued Fox Broadcasting production schedules that extend toward undetermined endpoints. 742 Evergreen Terrace's living room materializes under opening credits as the Simpson family rushes toward the couch across 750 plus unique variations where simple sitting routines yield to Guillermo del Toro's horror pastiche, Banksy's sweatshop commentary, and Don Hertzfeldt's existential animation experiments amid 30-second creative playgrounds. Original couch gag pattern establishes during Season 1 where family members run from left frame toward orange couch positioned against back wall under staircase and frame family portraits. Variations begin immediately through altered seating arrangements, unexpected obstacles, and surreal transformations that transform simple domestic ritual into unpredictable comedy beat. This opening sequence flexibility grants animators creative freedom within rigid format where every episode requires title sequence but permits experimentation that standard episode storytelling cannot accommodate. Guest director couch gags emerge during later seasons, where the show invites filmmakers and animators to contribute theatrical quality segments that replace standard openings. Guillermo del Toro directs Season 24's October 2013 horror tribute, where Simpson characters transform into del Toro's monster aesthetic through Pan's Labyrinth references and Pacific Rim homages that compress the director's visual obsessions into 2-minute sequence. Banksy contributes Season 22's controversial sweatshop commentary in October 2010, where outsourced animation production receives satirical excavation through dystopian factory depictions that implicate the show's own production practices. Network initially resists airing the segment before compromising on edited version that softens harshest imagery while preserving satirical intent. Don Hertzfeldt's Season 26 contribution titled The Simpsons to Futurama in February 2014 achieves cult status through surrealist animation, where stick figure Simpsons deteriorate across millennia into abstract forms, speaking garbled dialogue that deconstructs franchise persistence into existential meditation on memory decay and narrative exhaustion. The sequence runs over 3 minutes, exceeding standard couch gag duration through creative ambition that production accommodates despite time constraints. Fan response positions. Hertzfeldt's segment as artistic achievement that transcends television comedy through genuine experimental animation, granted platform within commercial sitcom structure. Longest couch gags extend beyond 3 minutes, where elaborate sequences replace standard title sequence entirely through extended animation that storyline episodes cannot contain. Shortest variations last mere seconds through visual punchlines that subvert viewer expectations, trained to anticipate 30-second duration. Animation style experiments range from claymation to pixel art to live-action integration, where format constraints lift temporarily for visual variety. Cultural references embed throughout couch gag history, where specific film homages, art movement parodies, and pop culture nods accumulate into comprehensive media archaeology that documents American entertainment evolution through condensed animated citations. Couch gag repository archives the franchise's creative flexibility, opening sequences functioning as miniature films that grant directors experimental freedom within rigid sitcom structures, where 30 seconds permit stylistic risks traditional episodes cannot accommodate. Springfield Elementary School's detention hall flickers under classroom lights as Bart Simpson approaches the chalkboard across 600 plus unique punishments where "I will not waste chalk" yields to topical references like "being right sucks," post-election cycles that embed social commentary into opening rituals. Chalkboard gag debuts during Season 1's opening sequence where Bart writes lines as punishment before skateboarding home through title sequence establishing routine that episodes repeat with textual variation. Simple rebellious statements dominate early seasons through punishments like "I will not call my teacher hotcakes" and "they are laughing at me, not with me," that reflect childhood misbehavior and classroom discipline dynamics without deeper satirical purpose. Evolution toward topical commentary occurs during later seasons, where writers use chalkboard space for cultural references and meta-humor that extends beyond Bart's detention context. Political jokes emerge where election results, policy controversies, and current events receive 10-word treatment that audiences scan during opening seconds. Self-referential humor increases through statements like "I will not wait 20 years to make another movie," and "being right sucks," following prediction vindication. Episode-specific gags occasionally reference upcoming plot content or production circumstances that dedicated viewers recognize. As insider commentary, some international broadcasts censor controversial gags where political sensitivity or cultural inappropriateness prompts substitution with neutral alternatives. Episodes occasionally omit chalkboard gags entirely, where extended couch sequences or time constraints eliminate the detention hall beat from title sequence. These absences generate fan speculation about production decisions and thematic significance, where missing elements disrupt expected patterns. Writer room process for gag selection remains informal, where staff members suggest options during production meetings that showrunners approve based on humor value and appropriateness for upcoming episode context. No formal database governs selection, ensuring variety and preventing repetition beyond occasional deliberate callbacks. Chalkboard repository mirrors, couch gag archives as dual opening traditions that grant writers secondary creative outlets where 10-second frames carry satirical weight, independent of episode narratives unfolding beyond title sequences. Springfield dissolves into horror anthology frames each October, as Treehouse of Horror specials materialize across 34 annual installments, where canonical rules suspend amid 3-segment structures parodying The Shining, The Twilight Zone, and A Nightmare on Elm Street through Simpson character vessels that die, transform, and reset without episodic consequence. October 25th, 1990 marks the first Treehouse debut during Season 2, where anthology format permits narrative experimentation beyond Springfield's realistic constraints that weekly episodes maintain through internal consistency protocols. 3 distinct segments divide each special, where horror, science fiction, and supernatural premises grant writers creative freedom to explore genres conventions that traditional sitcom structure cannot accommodate. Character deaths occur without permanent consequence. Supernatural transformations reverse at episode conclusion. Time travel paradoxes and alien invasions disappear from canonical memory when November episodes restore Springfield's normalcy. Bad Dream House opens the inaugural treehouse where the Simpson family purchases haunted residents whose malevolent presence attempts murder through bleeding walls and demonic possession before the house's suicide resolves. Conflict through self-destruction. Hungry Are the Damned follows, where Kang and Kodos abduct the family for fattening purposes that Lisa's suspicion reveals before misunderstanding leads to abandonment on Earth. The Raven concludes through Edgar Allan Poe adaptation, where Bart torments Homer as the tapping bird, while James Earl Jones narrates verse segments that juxtapose Gothic literature with cartoon aesthetics. These initial segments establish template where literary parody, film homage, and original horror concepts rotate through 3-part structure that subsequent Treehouse editions replicate with thematic variations. Notable parodies accumulate across 34 specials, where specific segments achieve classic status through execution quality and cultural penetration. The Shining from Treehouse of Horror V presents The Shining parody, where No TV and No Beer make Homer something something through Jack Torrance homage that climaxes with groundskeeper Willie's axe murder and donut resolution that subverts Stanley Kubrick's bleak finale. Time and Punishment within the same episode explores Butterfly Effect through Time Travel Breakfast Toaster, where Homer's prehistoric interventions create dystopian alternate Springfields, including Flanders' dictatorship and perpetual donut reign, before accepting close enough timeline that features slightly enlarged tongue appendages. Nightmare Cafeteria from Treehouse to 6 depicts Springfield Elementary's budget crisis solution through student consumption, where faculty prepares underperforming children as cafeteria entrees that Bart and Lisa escape through grinder proximity. Animation-style variations distinguish Treehouse segments from standard episodes, where horror aesthetics permit darker color palettes, expressionist lighting, and gore effects that typical Springfield adventures avoid. Character deaths display blood and dismemberment impossible during canonical episodes. Atmospheric rendering emphasizes shadows and ominous environments. These visual departures signal non-canonical status, where audience recognizes format suspension through stylistic cues that differentiate anthology horror from integrated storytelling. Title sequences receive horror-themed variations, where standard opening transforms into graveyard settings, monster attacks, and supernatural imagery that establishes October special identity before segments commence. Kang and Kodos establish recurring presence through Treehouse appearances, where the tentacled aliens return annually in various invasion scenarios, political manipulations, and cookbook deceptions that provide continuity across otherwise disconnected specials. Their distinctive voices and mutual hostility toward humanity create recognizable antagonists whose Treehouse exclusivity prevents canonical integration,
while permitting unlimited destruction of Springfield without consequence. Alien invasion segments proliferate, where Earth conquest, human consumption, and intergalactic warfare scenarios explore science fiction tropes through a comedic lens that balances genuine tension with a satirical deflation. Censorship concerns emerge during earlier Treehouse broadcasts, where graphic content and disturbing imagery prompt parental warnings and network hesitation about appropriateness for family-friendly time slots. Some segments receive edited versions for initial broadcast before uncut editions appear in syndication and home video releases. The show navigates content boundaries where Halloween special status justifies a darker material while maintaining broadcast standards that prevent explicit gore or genuine horror that would traumatize
younger viewers accidentally watching. This balance between edgy content and commercial accessibility defines Treehouse identity, where horror parody exceeds typical episode limits without approaching genuine adult horror that cable networks permit. Fan favorite segment rankings emerge through internet discourse and official polls, where specific Treehouse stories achieve beloved status that subsequent specials struggle to match. Early installments from seasons 4 through 10 receive disproportionate praise, where Golden Age writing quality elevates anthology concepts beyond later entries that maintain format without matching creative inspiration. Declining quality debates parallel broader zombie Simpsons discourse, where post-Golden Age Treehouse specials receive criticism for formulaic execution and diminished satirical sharpness that Golden Era segments demonstrated through literary knowledge and film literacy that recent entries lack. Horror anthology tradition persists as annual format experimentation, where Springfield's constraints lift temporarily, allowing character deaths and supernatural scenarios that exist in isolated continuity bubbles before November episodes restore canonical Springfield stability. Treehouse segments function as pressure release valves, permitting extreme narrative possibilities that accumulate across decades into comprehensive horror comedy archive, independent from the show's primary continuity. Recording booths illuminate under studio microphones as the core 6 voice actors assemble across 750-plus episodes, where Dan Castellaneta's Homer growl persists from 1987, Tracy Ullman shorts through 2024 productions amid vocal aging that deepens character textures while maintaining recognizable consistency through contract disputes and cultural controversies. Voice actor longevity anchors franchise continuity, where performer consistency preserves character identity across animation, style transitions, showrunner changes, and writing staff turnovers that would otherwise fragment Springfield's population into inconsistent characterizations. Dan Castellaneta voices Homer Simpson alongside multiple supporting characters, including groundskeeper Willie, Crusty the Clown, and Barney Gumble, through distinct vocal performances that prevent audience recognition of single performer multiplicity. Julie Kavner's Marge rasp develops from natural voice into strained characterization, where decades of gravelly delivery physically taxes vocal cords that medical professionals warn risk permanent damage. Nancy Cartwright voices Bart Simpson despite female performer voicing male child character, where casting choice stems from Cartwright's audition superiority over male candidates during initial casting sessions. Her vocal range permits convincing pre-adolescent boy delivery that ages maintain through controlled technique, preventing natural vocal maturation from affecting character consistency. Yeardley Smith's Lisa voice remains largely unchanged. Across decades, where nasally delivery and slight lisp characteristics survive actress aging without requiring technical adjustments. Hank Azaria contributes a vast supporting cast range, including Mo Saislak, Chief Wiggum, Apu Nahasapi Mapetalan, and comic book guy through vocal versatility that demonstrates single performer's ability to inhabit multiple distinct characterizations without audience conflation. Harry Shearer voices Mr. Burns, Ned Flanders, Principal Skinner, and numerous others, where his theatrical background enables character differentiation through subtle accent variations and tonal adjustments. Contract negotiations punctuate franchise history, where voice actors leverage their irreplaceability to secure compensation, increases reflecting the show's profitability that Fox Broadcasting initially resists before conceding to preserve production continuity. 1998, negotiations grant primary cast members $25,000 per episode. 2004 disputes threaten production shutdown before settlement reaches $250,000 per episode with back-end participation. 2011 negotiations create crisis where Fox proposes 45% pay cuts that cast rejects before compromising at $300,000 per episode without back-end points. These labor conflicts underscore voice actors' awareness that recasting threatens franchise integrity, where audience attachment to specific vocal performances prevents replacement without significant backlash that would damage commercial value. Hank Azaria Apu controversy emerges following Hari Kondabolu's 2017 documentary, The Problem with Apu, where South Asian Americans criticize the convenience store owner's accent and characterization as offensive stereotype that influences real-world discrimination and bullying experiences. Azaria initially defends the character through artistic merit arguments before evolving position, acknowledges legitimate concerns about representation and perpetuation of harmful stereotypes through comedic exaggeration. January 2020 marks Azaria's public announcement, retiring from voicing Apu, where he states willingness to step aside if character continues under South Asian voice actor, but production effectively retires the character entirely through absence from new episodes. This retirement distinguishes cultural sensitivity response from deceased actor character retirements, where problematic characterization, rather than performer loss, motivates decision. Harry Shearer's temporary departure during 2015 threatens production continuity, where contract disputes prompt his resignation announcement before negotiations resolve differences and secure his return for season 27 and beyond. His departure would have required recasting multiple major characters, including Mr. Burns and Ned Flanders, whose distinctive voices constitute irreplaceable franchise elements. Fox Broadcasting's willingness to meet Shearer's contract demands reflects voice actor leverage, where essential performers negotiate from a position of strength that secondary cast members lack. Vocal aging effects manifest subtly across decades, where performers' natural aging deepens voices, reduces range, and alters character deliveries in ways that dedicated listeners detect through side-by-side comparison of Season 1 and Season 35 episodes. Dan Castellaneta's Homer voice shifts from manic energy toward weary resignation. Julie Kavner's Marge croak intensifies into painful-sounding rasp. Nancy Cartwright maintains Bart consistency through technical skill. These gradual changes accumulate imperceptibly to casual viewers, while audiophile fans catalog transformations that aging inevitably produces, despite performers' efforts to preserve character vocal signatures. Recording process evolution transforms from ensemble sessions, where cast members perform together in single booth, toward isolated recordings, where performers deliver lines separately for editing assembly. Early seasons prioritize group dynamics where actors respond to each other's performances in real time, creating organic interactions that separate recordings cannot replicate. Production efficiency eventually overrides creative benefits, where scheduling individual sessions permits faster turnaround and accommodates actors' conflicting availability without coordinating 6 schedules simultaneously. This technical shift reflects broader animation industry trends, where economic considerations outweigh artistic idealism that ensemble recording represented. Voice actor continuity cements the franchise's sonic identity, vocal consistency preserving character essence across decades, where subtle aging inflections add texture without disrupting recognition protocols that bind Springfield's population to their unchanging performers. Hollywood's elite materialize in Springfield's recording booths as guest star protocols activate from Season 3 onward, where Michael Jackson voices Leon Kompowski under pseudonym John J. Smith amid contractual restrictions, while Dustin Hoffman credits Sam Eddick for Mr. Bergstrom's performance in emotional episodes that deploy celebrity talent for character depth. Guest star phenomenon begins modestly during early seasons, where occasional celebrity appearances enhance specific episodes without dominating production. Dustin Hoffman's Season 2 appearance as Lisa's substitute teacher establishes pseudonym tradition, where contractual obligations with other studios prevent official credit despite significant performance contribution. Michael Jackson's Season 3 appearance in Stark Raving, Dad generates confusion, where performer voices Leon Kompowski. Singing parts receive sound-alike replacement due to recording contract restrictions that prohibit Jackson's actual singing voice in non-approved productions. Albert Brooks achieves legendary guest status through multiple appearances, voicing distinct characters, where his improvisational skills generate extended scenes that writers preserve despite runtime constraints. Hank Scorpio in You Only Move Twice, Jacques in Life on the Fast Lane, and Russ Cargill in the Simpsons movie. demonstrate Brooks's ability to create memorable characters through vocal performance alone, where his distinct delivery style elevates material beyond script page. Writers craft episodes specifically for Brooks, where his confirmed participation justifies narrative structures built around character depth that typical guest spots cannot accommodate. Phil Hartman's recurring roles as Lionel Hutz and Troy McClure establish rare guest actor permanence, where voice performer integrates into Springfield's population through repeated appearances that blur distinction between guest star and regular cast member. Lionel Hutz functions as Simpson family's incompetent attorney, whose ambulance chasing and legal malpractice provide comic relief across multiple seasons. Troy McClure hosts infomercials and educational films through has-been actor persona desperate for relevance. Hartman's May 1998 murder terminates both characters permanently, where showrunners decree retirement over recasting out of respect for performer, whose distinctive voice performances constitute irreplaceable character elements. His absence creates a noticeable void in Springfield's ecosystem, where legal and entertainment industry satire loses primary vehicles. Be Yourself direction style emerges as standard guest star instruction, where performers receive guidance to voice characters using natural speaking voices, rather than adopting accents or character affectations. This approach streamlines recording sessions, while capitalizing on celebrity recognizability, where audiences appreciate familiar voices within Springfield context. Some guests ignore direction and create distinct character voices. Others follow instruction and voice Springfield residents who sound suspiciously identical to their real-world counterparts. Direction philosophy reflects pragmatic accommodation of limited recording time, where elaborate vocal characterization demands multiple takes and coaching that celebrity schedules cannot accommodate. Guest star saturation accelerates during post-Golden Age seasons, where nearly every episode features celebrity appearance that marketing departments exploit for promotional value. Episode structures increasingly build narratives around guest star participation rather than integrating celebrities into Springfield stories organically. Musical guests perform extended concert sequences. Athletes voice themselves in sports-themed episodes. Actors appear in plots designed specifically to showcase participation rather than serving character development or satirical purposes. This systematic celebrity deployment dilutes focus on core family dynamics, where Homer, Marge, Bart, Lisa, and Maggie yield screen time to famous voices that audiences recognize, but stories do not require. Playing themselves versus voicing characters' distinction separates guest star approaches where some celebrities portray fictionalized versions of their public personas, while others voice original Springfield residents disconnected from real-world identities. Self-portrayal episodes tend toward meta-commentary, where Hollywood culture and celebrity absurdity receive satirical examination through famous performers mocking their own images. Character voicing permits greater creative freedom, where guests inhabit roles divorced from celebrity baggage that self-portrayal inherently carries. Both approaches serve different narrative purposes, where episode requirements dictate appropriate deployment. Celebrity integration transforms from strategic character enhancement into systematic expectation, where every episode anticipates guest voices, shifting Springfield from insular animated town into Hollywood crossroads that reflects industry networks through vocal cameos. Production accommodates celebrity schedules and egos, where guest satisfaction sometimes overrides creative quality that earlier seasons prioritized above promotional considerations. Springfield's population contracts under tragic circumstances, as Phil Hartman's May 28, 1998 murder silences Lionel Hutz and Troy McClure permanently, where showrunners decree character retirement over recasting amid industry debates about voice actor replaceability versus respectful erasure that honors performer legacies. Hartman's wife Bryn murders the actor during domestic dispute before committing suicide, creating tragedy that reverberates through entertainment industry, where his comedic talents and distinctive voice work influenced animation and live-action comedy across Saturday Night Live, News Radio, and Simpson contributions. Production immediately retires both characters following Hartman's death, where ethical considerations override commercial incentives to continue profitable character appearances through replacement voice actors. Lionel Hutz disappears from legal proceedings. Troy McClure vanishes from infomercials and educational films. Springfield adjusts to their absence without acknowledgement or explanation, where characters simply cease existing within narrative continuity. Marsha Wallace's death on October 25, 2013 prompts similar retirement protocol,
for Mrs. Edna Krabappel, where Bart's 4th grade teacher receives tribute episode and permanent retirement from active roster. Wallace voices the character from Season 1 through Season 25, where her distinctive laugh and weary cynicism define the burnt-out teacher archetype that satirizes American public education dysfunction. Retire with her character episode titled Four Regrettings, and a funeral addresses her absence through dedication card and chalkboard gag reading. We'll really miss you, Mrs. K, that serves as farewell tribute. Subsequent episodes resolve her character arc through off-screen marriage to Ned Flanders, an implied death that canonical continuity acknowledges without explicit depiction. Ruthie Taylor Death, in July 2019, receives
different treatment where Martin Prince and other minor characters she voiced undergo recasting rather than retirement due to their supporting status that permits replacement without significant audience disruption. Gray Delisle assumes Martin Prince voice acting duties alongside other Taylor characters, where minor role recasting follows industry standard practice. That distinguishes supporting players from major characters whose retirements honor performer contributions more significantly. This tiered approach reflects character importance hierarchy, where major recurring roles receive retirement respect, while minor appearances permit practical recasting that maintains Springfield population without endless contraction. Retirement policy establishes that major characters voiced by deceased actors receive permanent retirement, while minor characters permit recasting based on narrative necessity and character prominence within franchise ecosystem. Phil Hartman and Marcia Wallace characters achieve sufficient importance that replacement voices would constitute disrespectful substitution of irreplaceable performances. Ruthie Taylor's supporting characters lack individual prominence that justifies retirement over practical recasting that preserves Springfield's populated feeling without excessive memorial gestures for every voice performer death. Fan reactions to character absences vary, where Lionel Hutz and Troy McClure retirement receives universal acceptance as appropriate tribute to Hartman's legacy, while some viewers question whether permanent removal serves memory better than continuation under new performers who could maintain character presence within Springfield. Mrs. Krabappel's retirement generates emotional response, where her relationship with Bart and marriage to Ned create narrative threads that her absence leaves unresolved despite tribute episode attempts at closure. These debates reflect broader questions about fictional character ownership, where performers' contributions blur boundaries between actor and role. Tribute episodes and dedication cards mark performer deaths, where production acknowledges real-world loss through brief on-screen tributes that contextualize character absences for audiences unaware of behind-scenes tragedies. Season 25 premiere dedicates episode to Marcia Wallace's memory. Season 10 episode dedicated to Phil Hartman appears shortly after his death. These memorials serve dual purposes, where entertainment industry honors colleagues while informing audiences about production changes that affect character availability. Retirement protocols preserve performer legacies through character absence, empty spaces in Springfield's ecosystem, marking lives rather than seamlessly replacing voices, where industry norms favor continuity over commemoration, distinguishing the franchise's respectful approach. Springfield's animation cells flicker with retrospective prophecy, as viral compilations catalog apparent predictions where Bart to the Future depicts Trump presidency in 2000, 15 years before 2016 election reality, while Season 6's Smartwatch and Season 10's 20th Century Fox Disney acquisition forge meme status through selective historical curation. Prediction phenomenon emerges during 2010s, where internet users excavate old episodes, searching for coincidental accuracy between satirical extrapolation and subsequent real-world events that transform comedy into apparent prophecy. Trump presidency prediction achieves greatest notoriety, where Season 11's 2000 episode Bart to the Future presents future timeline, where Lisa Simpson assumes presidency following Donald Trump's disastrous term that bankrupted the nation and left the economy in ruins. The episode's throwaway joke about Trump presidency becomes retrospectively significant, following 2016 election, where satirical impossibility transforms into political reality that audiences interpret as supernatural foresight. Disney acquisition prediction appears in Season 10's 1998 episode, When You Dish Upon a Star, where sign reading 20th Century Fox. A division of Walt Disney Corza appears briefly during scenes set in Hollywood, where the joke satirizes media consolidation trends without anticipating literal accuracy. March 2019's actual Disney acquisition of Fox Entertainment assets validates the prediction through corporate merger that writers intended as exaggerated satire rather than genuine forecast. Smartwatch prediction from Season 6's 1995 episode, Lisa's Wedding, depicts future timeline where characters wear watch-based communication devices that anticipate Apple Watch and smartwatch proliferation by 2 decades. Video calling technology appears in various episodes, predating widespread FaceTime and Zoom adoption. Horse meat scandal prediction surfaces when European horse meat contamination of beef products in 2013 recalls Season 5's 1994 episode, Sweet Seymour Skinner's Badass's Song, where school cafeteria serves horse meat labeled as beef in background joke that becomes retrospectively prophetic. Lady Gaga's Super Bowl halftime show receives prediction credit when Season 23's 2012 episode, Lisa Goes Gaga, depicts the performer's elaborate concert staging that resembles her actual 2017 Super Bowl performance through suspended wire work and theatrical costume changes. Higgs boson particle discovery, autocorrect technology, Greece economic crisis, and numerous other predictions accumulate through fan archaeology that matches comedy to reality. Explanation for prediction accuracy stems from multiple factors, where show's longevity provides vast episode catalog for coincidental matching, satirical extrapolation of existing trends produces logical future scenarios, and confirmation bias emphasizes hits while ignoring misses. 750 episodes across 35 years generate thousands of jokes, cultural references, and satirical scenarios where statistical probability ensures some percentage matches. Future events through pure chance. Writers extrapolate contemporary trends into comedic exaggeration, where Trump's presidential ambitions existed in 2000, making the joke topical satire rather than random selection. Media consolidation trends make Disney-Fox merger logical satirical target. Technology development follows predictable trajectories that smartwatch jokes anticipate through existing miniaturization trends. Failed predictions vastly outnumber accurate ones where episodes depict flying cars, robot servants, and futuristic scenarios that never materialize alongside accurate extrapolations that viral compilations emphasize. Selective memory filters prediction discourse, where audience remembers hits and forgets misses, creating perception of prophetic capabilities that statistical analysis undermines. Writers never claim prediction intentions, where comedy derives from satirical exaggeration rather than genuine forecasting that would require research and serious futurism beyond sitcom scope. Writer perspectives on prediction phenomenon express bemusement where creators appreciate audience engagement while rejecting supernatural attribution. Al Jean and other showrunners acknowledge coincidental accuracy stems from satirical commentary on existing trends rather than crystal ball consultation. Some writers enjoy retrospective validation where jokes prove prescient. Others dismiss the phenomenon as statistical inevitability, where enough jokes eventually match reality through probability rather than insight. The show occasionally references its prediction reputation through meta-humor that acknowledges public perception without claiming legitimate forecasting abilities. Prediction mythology amplifies through selective archival where viral culture excavates coincidental accuracy while ignoring hundreds of satirical extrapolations that never materialized, transforming quantity-based probability into perceived prophetic capabilities that writers never claimed. Springfield's borders dissolve into deliberate inconsistency as town maps contradict across episodes where nuclear power plant positions shift from walking distance to distant horizon, gorges materialize for plot convenience, and Shelbyville adjacency varies amid geographical ambiguity that Matt Groening maintains through state location, secrecy spanning 35 seasons. Springfield's spatial relationships defy logical mapping, where 742 Evergreen Terrace sits simultaneously near town center and suburban periphery, depending on narrative requirements. Most Tavern occupies corner location that changes relative position to Simpson home across episodes. Springfield Elementary School distances fluctuate between walkable proximity and bus route necessity. These contradictions stem from deliberate creative choice, rather than production error where writers prioritize story needs over geographic consistency that would constrain narrative flexibility. State mystery generates decades of speculation where fans analyze clues attempting to pinpoint Springfield's location within American geography that the show systematically undermines through contradictory evidence. Episodes eliminate all 50 states through negative references, where characters mention not living in specific states or visual gags display maps excluding particular regions. Season 4's Marge in Chains depicts angry mobs stating they're from a state that borders Ohio, Kentucky, Nevada, and Maine simultaneously, a geographic impossibility that mocks location speculation. Season 8's Behind the Laughter presents conflicting documentary narration, where original broadcast claims Springfield exists in northern Kentucky, while syndicated version switches to southern Missouri, intentionally contradicting itself to prevent definitive answer. Matt Groening names Springfield after Springfield, Oregon, where he spent childhood years, but explicitly refuses to confirm this inspiration as canonical location to preserve the town's universal relatability. Every American recognizes their hometown in Springfield's generic features, where Middle American architecture, typical institutions, and cultural touchstones create everywhere nowhere quality that specific state placement would undermine. The name Springfield itself represents American ubiquity, where dozens of real Springfields scatter across the nation, making the choice simultaneously specific and generic. 2012. Smithsonian exhibition on Springfield location examines geographic clues without reaching conclusion, validating ambiguity as intentional design rather than solvable mystery. 742. Evergreen Terrace anchors the franchise's primary location, where Simpson home layout persists through renovations, destructions, and reconstructions, despite room count inconsistencies and architectural impossibilities. Ground floor contains living room with iconic orange couch, kitchen with multiple configuration variations, and dining room whose existence fluctuates based on scene requirements. Second floor houses 3 bedrooms for parents, daughters, and son alongside bathroom that occasionally multiplies into multiple facilities. Basement depth expands for plot accommodation, where Homer's workshop, Marge's storage, and mysterious spaces appear when episodes require underground settings. The Rumpus Room references emerge sporadically across seasons despite no consistent spatial placement within home architecture. Moe's Tavern establishes working-class refuge where bar stool arrangement and telephone placement maintain rough consistency while building exterior and neighborhood position shift across episodes. Homer's designated seat remains relatively stable. Telephone mounted on wall near entrance permits prank call setups. Pool table occupies back area. Restroom locations vary. These core elements persist, while spatial relationships to surrounding Springfield geography fluctuate, where some episodes place the tavern on corner lot, while others embed it mid-block within commercial district. Springfield nuclear power plant towers as employment anchor, where cooling towers dominate skyline from certain angles while vanishing entirely from other town perspectives. Plant distance from Simpson home ranges from walkable commute to significant car journey depending on episode requirements. Interior layouts shift dramatically, where Sector 7G positioning relative to executive offices, cafeteria, and safety systems reconfigures across episodes without acknowledged inconsistency. Mr. Burns's office tower height varies from modest elevation to skyscraper prominence that geographical logic cannot reconcile. Springfield Elementary School, Quickie Mart, Crusty Burger, Android's Dungeon, and other recurring locations maintain internal consistency, while external positioning and inter-building relationships refuse stabilization. School proximity to Simpson home permits Bart's skateboard commute in some episodes, while bus transportation appears necessary in others. Quickie Mart exists simultaneously as neighborhood convenience store and destination, requiring deliberate travel. Crusty Burger franchise ubiquity places restaurants throughout Springfield in configurations that defy coherent town planning. Shelbyville Rivalry positions the neighboring town as Springfield's mirror and nemesis, where cultural differences and historical feuds generate recurring conflicts across episodes. Shelbyville's geographical relationship to Springfield shifts between immediate adjacency, permitting easy crossing, and significant distance requiring deliberate journeys. Episodes reference the town's founding dispute over permission to marry cousins, establishing cultural distinction that satirizes regional American stereotypes through exaggerated differentiation. Shelbyville residents view Springfield with reciprocal contempt, creating symmetrical rivalry that plot mechanics exploit through competitions, conflicts, and comparative scenarios. Geographical features materialize as needed, where Springfield Gorge appears for plot-specific scenarios despite no prior establishment in town geography. Mount Springfield emerges when episodes require elevation. Ocean proximity varies dramatically, where some episodes depict landlocked setting, while others place Springfield near coastline, permitting beach trips and marine activities. These contradictions accumulate without resolution
where writers treat geography as narrative tool rather than consistent world-building element that realistic fiction demands. Geographical ambiguity preserves Springfield's universal relatability. Refusing fixed coordinates ensures every American town recognizes itself in animated streets, where deliberate contradiction prevents limiting specificity that would undermine the show's everywhere nowhere satirical positioning. 742, Evergreen Terrace stands under Springfield's yellow skies as the Simpson family home materializes across shifting floor plans where 3 bedrooms yield to
occasional fourth guest rooms, basement depths expand for plot requirements, and the mysterious rumpus room appears sporadically amid architectural inconsistencies that mirror geographical ambiguity. Address remains constant, while internal architecture fluctuates across episodes where room count, layout configuration, and spatial relationships defy consistent mapping. Ground floor living room maintains recognizable orange couch, television position, and staircase location that establish visual continuity despite surrounding space adjustments. Kitchen alternates between open plan connecting to dining room and enclosed separate space depending on scene requirements. Garage attaches to house through configurations that shift between direct interior access and external only entry. Bedroom count typically settles at 3, where master bedroom houses Homer and Marge, second bedroom belongs to Bart, and third bedroom accommodates Lisa and Maggie sharing space, until later episodes grant Lisa independent room that spatial logic cannot accommodate within established exterior dimensions. Guest rooms appear occasionally when visiting relatives require accommodation, despite no prior establishment in home layout. Attic spaces emerge for storage scenarios and hidden secret discoveries that episodes exploit before disappearing from subsequent architectural consideration. These additions violate exterior building dimensions that remain visually consistent across seasons, while interior square footage expands impossibly. Basement functions as Homer's domain, where workbenches, tools, and recreational equipment accumulate across episodes without consistent spatial organization. Some episodes depict finished basement with recreational facilities, while others present unfinished storage space with exposed foundation and mechanical systems. The rumpus room receives sporadic mention as distinct basement space, whose purpose and location remain undefined beyond name reference that generates fan speculation about its canonical existence versus joke terminology for generic basement area. Depth varies dramatically, where some episodes suggest shallow basement, while others imply multi-level, subterranean spaces accommodating elaborate scenarios. Living room orientation shifts between episodes, where window placement, staircase positioning, and doorway locations reconfigure based on camera angle requirements and scene staging needs. Iconic couch faces television that sits against wall with varying window arrangements visible behind characters. During family viewing scenes, staircase leads to second floor from living room, but its precise position relative to front door and couch shifts across episodes. Family portraits hang on walls in arrangements that change composition and subject matter without acknowledged updating. These visual inconsistencies stem from animation production needs, where establishing consistent spatial geography constrains staging flexibility that episodic storytelling requires for optimal scene composition. Treehouse occupies backyard as Bart and Lisa's refuge, where structural integrity and interior space defy wooden platform reality. Exterior shots depict small, elevated structure, while interior scenes reveal spacious room accommodating multiple characters and furniture that platform dimensions cannot physically contain. This spatial impossibility mirrors basement expansion, where comedy requirements override architectural plausibility. Some episodes depict treehouse destruction, requiring reconstruction, while others present permanent fixture that survives seasonal changes without maintenance acknowledgement. Flanders' house at 744 Evergreen Terrace maintains consistent adjacency as sole stable geographical relationship, where property line positioning remains reliable across episodes. Shared hedge and fence permit neighbor interactions that plot mechanics exploit through borrowing violations and boundary disputes. Interior Flanders' home rarely appears in early seasons, before later episodes explore the residence, revealing evangelical decor and left-handed accommodations throughout. This neighboring consistency contrasts the Simpson home's internal fluctuations, where reliable external relationship grounds shifting internal geography. Real-world home recreations appear occasionally through promotional builds where full-scale Simpson house construction for contest prizes and marketing events attempts to resolve architectural ambiguities through physical realization. These builds compromise between competing episode layouts to create coherent structure that approximates screen appearance while acknowledging impossibility of perfect replication given source material contradictions. Floor plan analyses by fans and architects catalog inconsistencies while proposing rationalized layouts that accommodate majority configurations at expense of outlier episodes whose extreme spatial violations resist integration. Home architecture fluctuates through episodic demands where spatial logic surrenders to narrative convenience, establishing 742 Evergreen Terrace as emotionally consistent venue, despite floor plan contradictions that accumulate across 35 seasons of renovations, explosions, and resets. Moe's Tavern hums under neon beer signs as Springfield's working-class refuge materializes across 600-plus episode appearances, where Homer's designated barstool anchors daily drinking routines amid Barney Gumbel's alcoholism spirals, Lenny and Carl's nuclear plant gossip, and Bart's prank calls that torture Moe Sislak through receiver abuse. Moe's Tavern establishes during Season 1 as Homer's preferred drinking establishment, where the bartender's misanthropic personality and seedy venue atmosphere satirize American bar culture through exaggerated dysfunction. Dark wood paneling and dim lighting create oppressive environment where Springfield's working men gather post-shift to consume Duff Beer and complain about life's failures. Pool table occupies back corner. Telephone mounts near entrance. Bar runs length of main room with limited seating capacity that expands impossibly when episodes require crowd scenes. Moe Sislak emerges as tragic figure whose bartending career masks profound loneliness and suicidal ideation that episodes explore through darkly comedic scenarios. His romantic failures, physical unattractiveness, and complete social isolation generate sympathy beneath abrasive exterior where violent threats and customer abuse conceal desperate need for human connection. Multiple episodes depict suicide attempts that characters interrupt through coincidental timing that prevents completion. These dark humor elements balance lighter tavern scenes where the venue functions as simple sitcom setting for Homer's drinking scenes without deeper psychological exploration. Regular patrons establish hierarchy where Homer occupies preferred barstool with Barney claiming adjacent seat before sobriety storyline reduces his appearances. Lenny Leonard and Carl Carlson from Springfield, nuclear power plant, frequent the tavern as workplace drinking buddies whose friendship extends beyond professional relationship into genuine personal bond. Sam occasionally appears as secondary regular. These core patrons create stable social ecosystem where recognizable faces populate background during Homer-focused scenes that require tavern setting without demanding active participation from supporting characters. Prank call tradition emerges early, where Bart telephones the tavern requesting fictional patrons whose names create vulgar phrases when Moe calls them aloud, seeking the non-existent customer. Amanda Hugginkiss, Mike Roch, Hugh Jass, I.P. Freely. These juvenile gags humiliate Moe repeatedly across seasons, where his continued susceptibility despite pattern recognition demonstrates either extreme stupidity or desperate hope that legitimate customer requests occasionally manifest through telephone inquiries. Later episodes subvert the pattern where Moe anticipates prank calls or legitimate Hugh Jass customer actually appears in tavern, creating unexpected validation. Barney Gumbel's character arc addresses alcoholism seriously through Season 11's 2000 episode Days of Wine and Doses, where intervention and rehabilitation transform the town drunk into recovering alcoholic whose sobriety dramatically reduces episode appearances. This tonal shift reflects cultural sensitivity evolution, where early seasons played chronic alcoholism purely for laughs, while later entries acknowledge addiction's destructive reality through character growth that removes him from enabling environment. Barney's reduced presence creates noticeable absence in tavern scenes, where his belching interjections and pathetic behavior provided reliable comedy that sobriety eliminates. Some later episodes relapse the character temporarily, before recommitting to sober characterization that maintains inconsistently across subsequent seasons. Tavern transformations occur across various episodes, where financial desperation or plot contrivance converts Moe's into themed establishments, including upscale cocktail lounge, family restaurant, and jazz club. These temporary renovations reversed by episode conclusion or subsequent appearance, where the tavern's seedy dive bar aesthetic reasserts itself without explanation. Homer's Uncle Moe's family feedbag attempts family-friendly repositioning that fails miserably. Flaming Moe controversy emerges when Homer's recipe theft temporarily transforms the venue into popular night spot before resolution returns original format. These transformations test alternative concepts while preserving core identity that audience familiarity demands. Moe's personal history receives sporadic exploration, where episodes reveal his past as boxer, connection to organized crime, and various failed careers preceding bartending. These backstory revelations accumulate inconsistently where different episodes present contradictory origins that the show never reconciles through coherent biography. Hank Azaria voices Moe with distinctive, raspy delivery that distinguishes the character from his numerous other Springfield residents the actor performs, preventing audience conflation through vocal characterization that emphasizes Moe's working-class ethnicity and emotional damage. Tavern constancy provides Homer's escape protocols, barstool positioning cementing daily rituals where alcohol-fueled conversations, and Moe's misery creates Springfield's darkest, recurring venue that balances comedy with working-class desperation across 3 decades. Springfield nuclear power plant towers over the town skyline under cooling tower steam as Homer Simpson's Sector 7G workstation materializes amid safety violation accumulations where incompetent inspection protocols coexist with Mr. Burns' Montgomery ownership that prioritizes profit over regulatory compliance through Smithers' enablement. Springfield nuclear power plant establishes as Homer's primary employment location, where safety inspector position grants unearned responsibility to unqualified worker whose negligence creates recurring crisis scenarios across episodes. Sector 7G workstation consists of basic console, where Homer's duties involve monitoring dials and responding to warning signals that he consistently ignores through napping, donut consumption, and general inattention that realistic industrial safety would never tolerate. Lenny Leonard and Carl Carlson work alongside Homer in undefined technical positions where their competence exceeds their friends, but remains insufficient to prevent plant-wide catastrophes that threaten Springfield's population. Their workplace friendship extends into off-hours socializing at Moe's Tavern, where nuclear plant employees constitute the bar's primary customer base. This workplace-to-bar pipeline satirizes blue-collar American life where employment and drinking Venues blend into continuous social environment that defines working-class male existence. Mr. Burns' character embodies corporate villainy through extreme age, skeletal physique, and cartoonish evil that compresses capitalist critique into animated form. Charles Montgomery Plantagenet Schicklgruber Burns presides over the plant from executive office, where oil paintings and antique furniture reflect wealth accumulation across his ambiguous lifespan. That joke suggests exceeds 100 years through references to historical events he personally witnessed. His physical frailty contrasts his institutional power, where a feeble body requires Smithers' constant assistance, while corporate control permits environmental destruction and worker exploitation without consequence. Excellent finger tenting and release the hound's catchphrases punctuate his villainous declarations. Wayland Smithers Jr. functions as devoted assistant whose efficiency enables Burns' worst impulses through loyal execution of unethical directives. Smithers' implied homosexuality and unrequited attraction to Burns creates uncomfortable power dynamic, where professional devotion bleeds into personal obsession that Burns either fails to recognize or deliberately ignores. Episodes exploring Smithers' personal life reveal his apartment shrine to Burns and desperate attempts at romantic connection that his employer deflects through obliviousness or strategic avoidance. This relationship satirizes workplace exploitation, where employee dedication extends beyond professional boundaries into psychological dependency that benefits employer without reciprocation. Three-eyed fish mutation appears in early season episode, where Blinky emerges from plant's cooling water discharge, demonstrating environmental consequences of inadequate safety, protocols, and regulatory capture that permits continued operation despite obvious contamination. The mutant fish becomes a recurring symbol of Springfield's acceptance of corporate malfeasance, where economic dependency on plant employment overrides environmental and health concerns that rational communities would prioritize. Blinky's existence proves radiation leakage, yet investigations conclude without meaningful reform or punishment. Notable plant episodes accumulate, where Homer becomes union leader through accidental election, plant faces closure requiring employee intervention, and Mr. Burns blocks out the sun to increase electricity demand for heating. Who shot? Mr. Burns. 2-part episode climaxes Season 6 and opens Season 7 through mystery format, where Burns's sundial weapon and oil drilling scheme create town-wide grievances, culminating in shooting, whose perpetrator revelation as Maggie Simpson subverts audience expectations trained to suspect adult characters with legitimate grudges. These crisis scenarios explore labor relations, environmental justice, and regulatory failure through exaggerated sitcom premises, the ground satire in recognizable industrial contexts. Power plant design draws inspiration from Trojan nuclear plant in Oregon, where cooling towers and industrial architecture inform Springfield facilities' visual appearance. Animation renderings emphasize ominous presence, where smoking stacks and imposing structures dominate town skyline, creating constant reminder of nuclear threat lurking within Springfield's borders. This visual prominence mirrors plant's economic centrality, where the majority of Springfield's male population apparently derives employment from nuclear operations that realistic demographics would never support in single-industry town. Homer's job security despite catastrophic incompetence satirizes union protections and corporate indifference where firing incompetent employee requires effort that management refuses to expend, while union contracts prevent easy termination. Multiple episodes threaten his employment through performance reviews or safety violations before resolution restores status quo, without addressing underlying incompetence that endangers thousands. This unrealistic job security serves sitcom reset requirements, where permanent unemployment would disrupt family financial stability that shows domestic setting demands. Nuclear plant operations persist despite catastrophic safety records, where Homer's incompetence combines with Burns's greed to generate Springfield's power supply, and narrative conflicts that reset weekly without regulatory intervention or corporate accountability. Springfield Elementary School deteriorates under budget constraints as Principal Seymour Skinner maintains disciplinary protocols amid crumbling infrastructure, where Bart Simpson's detention accumulations coexist with underpaid teachers, outdated textbooks from 1952, and Superintendent Chalmers' inspection visits that expose institutional dysfunction. Springfield Elementary establishes during Season 1 as primary educational setting, where Bart's underachievement and Lisa's overperformance create academic extremes that satirize American public education through exaggerated institutional failure. Building conditions decline visibly across seasons where peeling paint, broken equipment, and overcrowded classrooms demonstrate chronic underfunding that staff navigates through creative adaptation and lowered expectations. Principal Seymour Skinner emerges as rigid administrator whose Vietnam War service and domineering mother, Agnes, creates psychological damage manifesting through authoritarian discipline and romantic incompetence. His relationship with teacher Edna Krabappel develops across seasons before Marcia Wallace's death terminates storyline through character retirement. Skinner's real name controversy erupts during Season 9's The Principal and the Pauper, where revelation that Seymour Skinner identity belongs to war buddy Armin Tamzarian usurped creates fan backlash and writer regret over character undermining twist that subsequent episodes ignore through selective continuity. Superintendent Gary Chalmers provides bureaucratic oversight, where his inspection visits reveal schools' operational failures that Skinner desperately conceals through elaborate deceptions. The dynamic generates recurring comedy, where Chalmers' Skinner exclamation precedes confrontation about fire damage, budget irregularities, or educational malpractice that Skinner deflects through increasingly absurd explanations. Steamed Ham's scene from 22 short films about Springfield achieves mimetic status decades after 1996 broadcast, where awkward lunch conversation between the administrators becomes internet phenomenon through remix culture and absurdist humor appreciation. Teacher roster includes Edna Krabappel as Bart's fourth grade instructor, whose burnt-out cynicism and chain-smoking depression satirize educator exhaustion within failing system. Her romantic relationship with Skinner provides character depth before transitioning to marriage with Ned Flanders following Marcia Wallace's 2013 death that prompts character retirement and tribute episode. Miss Hoover teaches Lisa's class with similar disillusionment, tempered by less prominent role in recurring storylines. Groundskeeper Willie provides janitorial services, an aggressive Scottish stereotype, whose muscular physique and violent tendencies create absurd contrast with the maintenance worker position. School underfunding jokes proliferate, where cafeteria serves mystery meat, textbooks reference outdated information, and facility maintenance lapses create hazardous conditions that students navigate daily. Lunch, Lady Doris serves unidentifiable food that students consume reluctantly. Library contains inadequate resources. Gymnasium lacks proper equipment.
These deprivations mirror real American public school struggles through exaggerated sitcom lens that maintains comedic tone while acknowledging genuine educational inequality. Bart's reputation as underachiever and troublemaker establishes through detention accumulation, prank execution, and academic failure that threatens grade retention across multiple episodes. His relationship with Edna Krabappel defines through mutual antagonism, where teachers' attempts at discipline fail against students' creative rebellion. Chalkboard gag punishment reflects their dynamic, where written lines serve as inadequate deterrent to behavior that Bart continues regardless of consequence. Springfield Elementary's permanent record maintains Bart's infractions across years, suggesting bureaucratic documentation that never manifests meaningful intervention. Lisa's overachievement and intellectual isolation create opposite educational experience, where second-grade placement in advanced curriculum fails to challenge her capabilities that exceed Springfield Elementary's capacity. Her saxophone playing provides artistic outlet and connection to Bleeding Gums Murphy, mentor figure. Political activism emerges through environmental causes and social justice advocacy, that episodes.
Explore through a child's perspective on adult failures. Teachers appreciate her excellence while recognizing systems' inability to properly nurture her gifts. Elementary school satire amplifies public education anxieties through animated exaggeration, where funding crises and institutional incompetence persist across decades, establishing Springfield Elementary as microcosm for systemic dysfunction that resets each September without resolution. Principal Skinner's kitchen ignites under animated flames as Steamed Hams materializes in Season 7's 22 short films about Springfield, where awkward lunch dialogue between Skinner and Superintendent Chalmers hibernates from April 14th, 1996 premiere until 2010's. Internet excavation transforms 4-minute segment into remix substrate, generating thousands of variations. Steamed Ham sequence occupies single segment within anthology, episode structure, where 22 short films format grants supporting characters, spotlight stories independent of Simpson family focus. Skinner invites Chalmers for lunch despite lacking cooking skills, prompting desperate Crusty Burger purchase that he attempts passing as home-cooked meal through increasingly absurd explanations when smoke and flames expose deception. Aurora Borealis claim represents comedic peak, where Skinner attributes kitchen fire to northern lights localized entirely within his kitchen at this time of year in this part of the country during this time of day. Chalmers' deadpan acceptance, despite obvious impossibility, creates absurdist exchange that viewers initially dismiss as throwaway joke, before a mimetic resurrection elevates segment into cult phenomenon. Dialogue's awkward rhythm and escalating absurdity create quotable structure that remix culture exploits through audio replacement, animation-style swaps, and narrative mashups that preserve scene's framework while substituting content. Obscurity duration spans 2 decades, where segment remains buried within Season 7's anthology episode that casual viewers rarely revisit. Early internet era lacks viral distribution mechanisms that later social media platforms provide for content discovery and sharing. Around 2016, dedicated fans begin uploading Steamed Hams clips to YouTube, where algorithm recommendations and community sharing trigger exponential exposure growth. Remix culture seizes the content where creators produce variations, incorporating different animation styles, musical genres, and narrative contexts that maintain original scene structure while transforming execution. YouTube channels emerge dedicated exclusively to Steamed Hams variations, where Sieva Gunner and similar accounts curate thousands of remixes that range from simple audio swaps to elaborate reanimations in claymation, pixel art, and 3D rendering. Some versions compress the scene into seconds. Others extend duration through repetition and elaboration. Mashups combine Steamed Hams with other media properties, creating crossover content that introduces segment to audiences unfamiliar with source material. This remix proliferation generates self-sustaining meme ecosystem, where variations reference other variations in recursive cultural production. Writer Bill Oakley's reaction to meme status expresses bemusement, where original creator appreciates renewed attention while acknowledging disconnect between intended throwaway joke and elaborate cultural afterlife. Oakley never anticipated scene achieving such prominence, where simple, absurdist humor becomes subject of academic analysis and artistic reinterpretation across global internet community. His willingness to engage with meme culture through social media commentary validates fan enthusiasm, while maintaining perspective on segment's original context as minor component within larger episode structure. Meme timeline acceleration occurs during late 2010s, where steamed hams variations proliferate exponentially through established remix culture and algorithmic content recommendation that surfaces variations to users, demonstrating engagement with similar content. This feedback loop creates impression of ubiquity, where steamed hams references permeate online spaces frequented by animation fans and internet culture participants. Real-world events occasionally reference the meme, where fast food marketing and regional dialect discussions invoke steamed hams terminology that originated as fictional absurdity. Most popular remix versions achieve millions of views, where specific variations like steamed hams, but increasingly verbose, or steamed hams, but it's a 90s PC game attract audience attention through creative execution that honors source material while demonstrating technical skill and conceptual creativity. These standout versions influence subsequent remixes where successful innovations propagate through imitation and variation that advance meme evolution through iterative cultural production. Meme archaeology reveals selective viral elevation, where thousands of Simpsons scenes remain dormant, while specific absurdist moments achieve remix immortality through combination of quotability, absurdism, and internet timing that writers never anticipated during 1996 production. Quickie Mart fluorescents flicker under cultural reckoning as Apu Nahasapima Patailan's character faces retirement following Hari Kondabolu's November 2017 documentary, The Problem with Apu, where South Asian American activists challenge convenience store owners' accent and characterization amid broader conversations about representation that culminate in Hank Azaria's February 2020 departure from the role. Apu Nahasapima Petilan establishes during Season 1 as Springfield's primary convenience store proprietor, whose Indian immigrant identity provides cultural diversity within predominantly white Springfield population. Character development across early seasons adds depth beyond ethnic stereotype through workaholic tendencies, arranged marriage to Manjula, octuplet children, and vegetarian beliefs rooted in Hindu faith that episodes explore with varying sensitivity. Stereotype elements accumulate through exaggerated Indian accent that Hank Azaria performs, convenience store ownership conforming to occupational cliché, and catchphrase, "Thank you, come again," that reduces character to service industry pleasantry. Early episodes played these elements purely for comedy, without apparent awareness of how stereotypical representation affects South Asian Americans experiencing discrimination and bullying, where Apu's characteristics become weaponized through racist mockery. Apu's Springfield integration and character complexity develop over seasons, but never fully escape foundational stereotype that his creation represents. The Problem with Apu documentary premieres at film festivals before a broader release where comedian Hari Kondabolu interviews South Asian American performers, writers, and community members about their experiences with Apu's cultural impact. Interviewees describe childhood bullying where classmates mimicked Apu's accent and convenience store association to mock their ethnicity. Professional actors recount audition experiences where casting directors expected Indian characters to perform Apu-style accents regardless of character background or individual speaking patterns. The documentary argues Apu's prominence as television's most visible Indian character for decades created lasting harm through stereotype reinforcement that influenced how Americans perceived and treated South Asian immigrants. Show's initial defensive response emerges through Season 29's April 2018 episode, No Good Read Goes Unpunished, where Marge and Lisa discuss politically correct book editing before Lisa breaks fourth wall, stating some things will be dealt with at a later date, if at all, while camera pans to Apu photograph with inscription, "Don't have a cow." This dismissive acknowledgement generates backlash, where critics interpret the response as refusing engagement with legitimate concerns about representation and cultural harm. Matt Groening's initial comments defend Apu as loving character whose depth exceeds stereotype accusations, positioning criticism as political correctness overreach rather than valid representation concern. Hank Azaria's evolving position reflects deeper engagement with criticism, where initial defensiveness yields to listening and understanding harm that well-intentioned performance caused regardless of intent. Azaria consults with Indian American community members, reads extensively about representation politics, and ultimately concludes his participation in Apu's characterization perpetuates harm that stepping aside might help address. His January 2020 announcement states willingness to relinquish role if production continues character under South Asian voice actor,
but showrunners effectively retire Apu entirely through absence from new episodes rather than recasting. Character appearances decline precipitously.
Following controversy where Apu vanishes from speaking roles while occasionally appearing in background crowd scenes without dialogue. This soft retirement distinguishes from Phil Hartman and Marcia Wallace character retirements, following actor deaths, where explicit acknowledgement and tribute episodes marked permanent removal. Apu exists in limbo, where character remains canonical, Springfield resident, but receives no storylines, speaking parts, or significant screen presence that would require addressing controversy or committing to representation solution. Broader animation industry impact manifests through recasting decisions, where other long-running shows reassess white actors voicing characters of color. Central Park, Big Mouth, and Family Guy announce recasting where white performers resign from playing black characters to allow actors of color authentic representation opportunities. Carl Carlson and Dr. Hibbert on The Simpsons undergo similar recasting, where Alex Dazer and Kevin Michael Richardson replace Hank Azaria's performances beginning in season 32, distinguishing these supporting characters from Apu's retirement through continued presence under new voice actors. Fan divisions emerge where some viewers support retirement as necessary correction of problematic representation, while others defend Apu as beloved character, whose complexity exceeds stereotype reduction. South Asian American community demonstrates no monolithic position where some appreciate retirement as removing harmful stereotype, while others lament losing representation, however flawed. These divisions reflect broader debates about representation's complexity, where presence of stereotypical character competes against absence of any representation within media landscape, historically excluding South Asian narratives. Character retirement protocols activate post-documentary as cultural sensitivity overrides nostalgic attachment, where Apu's absence creates Springfield void that showrunners navigate through silent presence rather than recasting, distinguishing problematic characterization from deceased actor retirements handled previously. Crusty the Clown Show broadcasts under Springfield airwaves as Herschel Schmoikel pinches Yerucham. Krustovsky commands children's entertainment monopoly where Krusty Burger franchises and merchandise exploitation generate wealth amid gambling addiction, mob debts, and illiteracy revelation that layer dysfunction beneath clown makeup and animated slapstick. Crusty the Clown establishes during Season 1 as Springfield's primary children's entertainer, whose afternoon television program dominates young viewership through slapstick violence and low-effort content that parents tolerate as electronic babysitter. Bart's devotion to Krusty borders on worship, where bedroom posters and merchandise consumption demonstrate fan loyalty that Krusty exploits through endless product licensing that prioritizes profit over quality or child welfare. Real name. Herschel Krustovsky reveals Jewish heritage that episodes explore through relationship with Father Rabbi Hyman Krustovsky, who disowned his son for abandoning religious scholarship to pursue comedy career. Season 3's Like Father, Like Clown depicts a reconciliation where Bart and Lisa facilitate reunion between estranged father and son through appeals to Jewish tradition and forgiveness that Rabbi Krustovsky initially resists before emotional breakthrough restores family connection. This storyline adds depth beyond clown surface, where cultural identity and family obligation create genuine pathos that typical slapstick episodes avoid. Business empire expansion encompasses Krusty Burger fast food chain whose low-quality menu and questionable ingredients satirize American fast food industry through exaggerated health violations and meat source ambiguity. Franchise locations proliferate across Springfield and beyond, where ubiquitous presence mirrors McDonald's market saturation. Merchandise ranges from dolls to clothing to alarm clocks, where Krusty's image licenses to any product regardless of appropriateness or quality control. This commercial exploitation satirizes celebrity merchandising, where fame converts into revenue streams that degrade brand integrity through oversaturation and cynical cash grabs. Gambling addiction surfaces across multiple episodes, where Krusty's compulsive betting creates financial crises requiring intervention from Bart or mob connections who enable continued access to credit despite mounting debts. Krusty gets busted, frames him for robbery that Sideshow Bob actually committed, establishing their antagonistic relationship. Subsequent episodes reveal tax evasion, bankruptcy, and various financial mismanagement scenarios that threaten his empire before resolution restores status quo without addressing underlying behavioral patterns. These storylines add darkness beneath comedic surface, where self-destructive tendencies persist despite fame and wealth that should provide security. Illiteracy revelation emerges during episode where Krusty's inability to read becomes plot point, requiring assistance to navigate text-dependent situations. This late series addition attempts explaining various past behaviors through educational deficit that earlier episodes never suggested. Mob connections provide recurring plot device where Krusty's entertainment industry ties extend to organized crime relationships that facilitate business dealings while creating dangerous entanglements. Fat Tony and other mob figures appear in Krusty-focused episodes demonstrating Springfield's criminal underworld integration with the legitimate entertainment business. Sideshow role establishes pattern where assistants cycle through a position, including Sideshow Bob, Sideshow Mel, and brief others who endure abuse and humiliation as part of children's entertainment formula. Sideshow Bob's transition from loyal assistant to revenge-seeking villain creates franchises' most sophisticated recurring antagonist, whose intellectual sophistication and murderous intent distinguish him from typical Springfield criminals. Sideshow Mel assumes permanent sidekick role following Bob's criminal turn, accepting physical abuse and professional disrespect as employment conditions. Heart attacks plague Krusty across episodes where his unhealthy lifestyle and performance stress manifest through cardiac events that briefly threaten mortality before recovery permits continued self-destruction. These health scares receive minimal character growth, where temporary reform quickly reverts to established patterns once immediate crisis passes. Dan Castellaneta voices Krusty with distinctive raspy delivery that differentiates the character from Homer despite both originating from same performer. Entertainment Empire persistence masks personal deterioration, where Krusty's clown persona generates revenue streams that fund addictions and debt repayments, establishing Springfield's darkest entertainer, whose commercial success coexists with spiritual emptiness across 3 decades. Springfield Penitentiary releases Sideshow Bob across multiple parole violations as Robert Underdunk Terwilliger Jr. escapes incarceration to pursue Bart Simpson vengeance, where Kelsey Grammer's theatrical voice work elevates cartoon villainy through Gilbert and Sullivan performances, high culture references, and rake-stepping sight gags that balance sophistication with slapstick. Sideshow Bob introduces during Season 1 as Krusty, the clown's silent sidekick, whose intellectual sophistication remains hidden beneath clown costume and subordinate role. Krusty Gets Busted reveals Bob's resentment toward his employer, whose lowbrow comedy offends Bob's refined sensibilities, motivating frame job that sends Krusty to prison while Bob assumes television show control. Bart's detective work exposes the frame job through observation that Sideshow Bob possesses large feet incompatible with evidence at crime scene, demonstrating child's unexpected deductive capabilities. Bob's arrest and imprisonment begin pattern where subsequent parole releases permit revenge plots targeting Bart for ruining his television career and condemning him to incarceration. This obsessive vendetta persists across 25-plus appearances, where Bob's sophisticated murder attempts combine elaborate planning with cartoon violence that permits Bart's survival through improbable escape and intervention. Cape Fear episode from Season 5 achieves classic status through extended Cape Fear homage where Bob stalks the Simpson family relocated under witness protection program to Houseboat. The episode extends Bob's rake-stepping gag across multiple impacts where initial sight gag repeats excessively for comedic effect that subverts expectations through durational commitment. Kelsey Grammer's performance reaches peak during climactic confrontation, where Bob delays Bart's murder to perform entire HMS Pinafore. Production as final request, allowing sufficient time for authorities to rescue the child through Bob's theatrical compulsion. Brother Cecil introduction adds family dimension, where David Hyde Pierce voices Bob's younger sibling, whose own revenge scheme targets both Bart and Bob through hydroelectric dam sabotage. This metacasting exploits Grammer and Pierce's real-world Frasier connection, where their television brotherhood translates into animated context. Cecil's appearance remains singular, unlike Bob's recurring status, though writers considered additional sibling episodes that production never realized. Marriage to Selma Bouvier creates temporary reformation, where Bob attempts murdering his wife for inheritance money during honeymoon. This plot demonstrates Bob's villainy extends beyond Bart obsession into general criminal opportunism that prison repeatedly fails rehabilitating. Multiple episodes explore Bob's criminal versatility through mayoral campaigns, Italian villa retirement, and various schemes that maintain threat level while varying specific objectives beyond simple Bart murder. Kelsey Grammer's Emmy-winning performance demonstrates voice acting excellence, where theatrical training permits sustained monologues and musical performances that typical animation voice work rarely accommodates. Bob's cultural sophistication manifests through classical music references, literary allusions, and highbrow artistic appreciation that contrasts his criminal pathology and violent intentions. This character complexity distinguishes Bob from one-note villains, where intellectual depth and genuine talent coexist with murderous obsession. Rake gag origins trace to Cape Fear, where a single step on garden rake leads to comedic impact, before writers extend joke through multiple repetitions that transform simple sight gag into durational absurdity. Subsequent Bob appearances reference the rake gag through callbacks and variations that acknowledge its mimetic status within fan culture. The gag's simplicity and unexpected persistence demonstrate how basic physical comedy achieves classic status through commitment and repetition that elevates pedestrian joke into franchise signature. Parole board incompetence enables Bob's repeated releases where obvious threat assessment failures permit dangerous criminals return to society despite clear patterns suggesting continued danger. This institutional dysfunction satirizes American criminal justice system, where bureaucratic process overrides common sense evaluation. Bob's articulate presentations and cultural refinement deceive authorities who grant parole based on superficial rehabilitation indicators that Bob exploits through performance, rather than genuine reform. Villainy refinement distinguishes Bob from Springfield's criminal element, where Harvard education and opera appreciation coexist with murderous intent, establishing franchise's most sophisticated recurring antagonist, whose parole violations sustain episodic returns across 25-plus appearances. 744 Evergreen Terrace stands adjacent to Simpson chaos as Ned Flanders maintains evangelical perfection, where okily-dokily verbal tics accompany boundary-crossing neighborliness amid leftorium ownership, Bible study devotion, and pathological niceness that Homer Simpson resents through borrowing violations and fence-line shouting matches. Ned Flanders introduces during Season 1 as idealized neighbor, whose perfection highlights Simpson family dysfunction through contrast. His evangelical Christianity manifests through constant religious references, church attendance, and moral rigidity that never translates into judgment toward neighbors whose behaviors violate his belief system. This Christian charity, combined with material success and family happiness, creates a living reproach to Homer's mediocrity, without Ned consciously intending such comparison. Leftorium establishes as Ned's business venture, where a left-handed specialty store caters to minority market requiring adapted products for sinister orientation. Springfield Mall location places the store in commercial context, where slim profit margins and niche market create perpetual financial instability that Ned's faith sustains through crisis periods. Episodes occasionally threaten business closure before community support, or unexpected windfall preserves the enterprise. This entrepreneurial dimension distinguishes Ned from simple neighbor role where professional identity exists, independent of residential proximity to Simpsons. Maud Flanders' death on February 11, 2000. During Season 11, episode Alone Again, Natura Diddly stems from voice actress Maggie Roswell's salary dispute with Fox Broadcasting that prompts her departure from show. Writers address actress unavailability through permanent character death, where a t-shirt cannon accident at Springfield Speedway kills Maud, creating widower status that transforms Ned's characterization. Subsequent episodes explore his grief and single parenthood challenges, while romance with Edna Krabappel develops before Marcia Wallace's death, terminates that storyline through Edna's retirement. Flanderization term derives from Ned's character evolution, where initial subtle religious faith escalates into dominating personality trait that overwhelms other characteristics. Early seasons present Ned as a well-rounded individual whose Christianity informs behavior without defining entire identity. Later seasons amplify religious elements until Ned becomes walking evangelical stereotype, whose every action and statement references faith. This exaggeration process lends terminology to broader media criticism, where characters devolve into single trait caricatures through Flanderization that sacrifices complexity for easily recognizable comedic shorthand. Rod and Todd, established as Ned's sons, whose sheltered upbringing and strict religious education create innocent naivete that episodes exploit for humor. Their limited cultural exposure and biblical worldview create comedic fish-out-of-water scenarios when mainstream culture intrudes on their protected existence. Simpson children's influence occasionally corrupts their innocence through exposure to secular entertainment and moral ambiguity that Ned's parenting attempts preventing without complete success. Homer's resentment toward Ned stems from inferiority complex, where Flanders' superiority in virtually every measurable category generates hostility that Ned's kindness cannot overcome. Homer borrows tools without returning them, damages Flanders' property without compensation, and generally exploits neighborly generosity while reciprocating with contempt. This asymmetrical relationship satirizes suburban neighbor dynamics, where proximity breeds familiarity that curdles into resentment despite superficial friendliness. Boundary violations occur repeatedly, where Ned's niceness prevents asserting reasonable limits on Homer's impositions. His inability to establish healthy boundaries stems from Christian charity interpreted as infinite tolerance that enables Homer's continued exploitation. Episodes exploring Ned's suppressed rage reveal psychological cost of maintaining perfect niceness, where genuine frustration accumulates beneath perpetual smile that finally erupts during Hurricane Nettie breakdown episode. Mental health exploration in Hurricane Nettie reveals childhood trauma, where unconventional therapy created Ned's inability to express negative emotions, explaining pathological niceness as defense mechanism rather than genuine personality trait. This psychological depth attempts justifying character quirks through backstory that transforms simple joke into trauma response, requiring professional intervention. Psychiatric hospitalization and treatment permit temporary catharsis before personality reasserts itself, ensuring character consistency. Flanderization, linguistic emergence, reflects characters' exaggeration and trajectory, where initial subtle faith evolves into defining trait that overshadows complexity, lending name to phenomenon where fictional characters devolve into single trait caricatures across long-running series. Springfield Nuclear Power Plant's executive office looms under oil painting shadows as Charles Montgomery, Plantagenet Schicklgruber Burns, materializes across ambiguous lifespan, where skeletal frame and excellent finger-tenting compress capitalist villainy into animated form that blocks sunlight, releases hounds, and values profit over Springfield's survival. Mr. Burns establishes during Season 1 as Springfield's wealthiest resident, whose extreme age jokes suggest existence, spanning multiple centuries through references to historical events he personally witnessed, including Crimean War, Spanish-American War, and various ancient conflicts that timeline impossibility renders comedically absurd. Physical frailty contrasts institutional power, where feeble body requires constant assistance, while corporate control permits environmental destruction and worker exploitation without meaningful consequence. Full name: Charles Montgomery, Plantagenet. Schicklgruber Burns reveals aristocratic pretensions through excessive nomenclature that episodes occasionally reference without consistent application. His age fluctuates wildly across episodes, where some suggest 104 years, while others imply pre-Civil War birth that would place him beyond human longevity limits. These contradictions serve comedy rather than coherent biography, where writers prioritize individual joke opportunities over maintained continuity. Physical weakness manifests through inability to perform basic tasks without assistance, susceptibility to disease, and general decrepitude that contrasts his immense wealth and power. Major villain episodes accumulate where Burns' schemes threaten Springfield through environmental catastrophe, economic manipulation, and tyrannical overreach. Who Shot Mr. Burns? Two-part episode spanning seasons. 6 and 7 presents mystery format where Burns' oil drilling destroys Springfield Elementary's groundwater, while sundial weapon blocks sunlight, increasing heating demand for power plant profit. Town-wide grievances accumulate until shooting occurs, with baby Maggie revealed as shooter through accidental weapon discharge, subverting audience expectations, trained to suspect characters with legitimate grudges and conscious intent. Blocking out the sun represents Burns' villainy apex, where environmental manipulation for corporate profit demonstrates cartoonish evil that realistic villains cannot approach. Giant apparatus physically obscures solar radiation, forcing Springfield residents into permanent darkness that increases electricity consumption, benefiting Burns' power monopoly. This scheme's absurd scale and obvious villainy satirizes corporate environmental destruction through exaggeration that renders subtle harm visible through impossible extremity. Three-eyed fish. Blinky emerges from plant's cooling water discharge as visible mutation, proving radiation contamination that Burns dismisses despite obvious evidence. Episodes exploring Blinky treat environmental disaster as accepted Springfield reality, where economic dependency on plant employment overrides health concerns that rational communities would prioritize. Burns's dismissal of environmental responsibility extends to air pollution, toxic waste disposal, and general ecological destruction that regulatory capture permits continuing without meaningful intervention. Bobo Teddy Bear storyline reveals sentimental dimension, where childhood attachment to stuffed animal persists across decades, creating vulnerability that humanizes otherwise purely villainous character. Rosebud episode parallels Citizen Kane through lost childhood innocence, represented by treasured object, whose recovery temporarily softens Burns before cynicism reasserts. This emotional depth complicates pure villain characterization where genuine feeling coexists with systematic cruelty, suggesting psychological complexity beneath cartoon evil. Wealth absurdity manifests through a mansion filled with priceless art, vast underground vaults containing currency, and casual expenditures that demonstrate resources exceeding rational accumulation. Burns's net worth jokes suggest billions or trillions depending on episode requirements where specific figures vary wildly without consistency. His spending combines aristocratic luxury with eccentric obsessions, including rare stamps, exotic animals, and elaborate revenge schemes whose costs exceed rational proportions. Release the Hound's catchphrase establishes through repeated deployment of attack dogs against trespassers, employees, and anyone displeasing Burns. This signature threat demonstrates casual violence where animal weapons enforce property boundaries and personal preferences without legal consequence. Smithers activates Hound release through voice command or button deployment depending on scene requirements, where mechanical consistency surrenders to comedic timing. Harry Shearer voices Burns with distinctive elderly tremor and aristocratic pronunciation that conveys simultaneous frailty and menace. Voice performance ages subtly across decades, where Shearer's own aging adds texture to characterization without dramatic shift disrupting recognition. Burns's vocabulary favors archaic terms and formal constructions that emphasize generational disconnect and class superiority, distancing him from Springfield's working population. Real-world billionaire inspirations include various robber barons and contemporary oligarchs whose consolidated wealth and political influence Burns's character satirizes through animated compression. His monopoly control, regulatory capture, and worker exploitation mirror actual capitalist practices that realistic depiction would render less visible than cartoon exaggeration permits. Burns embodies systemic critique, where individual villain concentrates structural problems into recognizable antagonists that audiences comprehend more readily than abstract economic analysis. Burns embodies capitalist extremity through animated compression, where industrialist archetype concentrates monopoly, environmental destruction, and worker exploitation into skeletal billionaire, whose immortality serves satirical function across regime changes and economic eras. Smithers' devotion manifests through workplace efficiency and implied homosexuality that creates complicated power dynamic, where professional excellence enables Burns' worst impulses amid unrequited affection that his employer deflects through obliviousness or strategic avoidance. Waylon Smithers Jr. establishes during Season 1 as Burns' executive assistant, whose loyalty extends beyond professional obligation into personal obsession, that episodes explore through varying degrees of explicitness across franchise history. Early seasons present Smithers as devoted employee, whose sexuality remains ambiguous through subtle coding that later seasons make increasingly explicit, without ever depicting romantic fulfillment. Smithers' apartment reveals shrine to Burns, including extensive photograph collection, memorabilia, and dream sequences depicting romantic scenarios that confirm sexual attraction his professional role cannot acknowledge. This unrequited love creates pathetic dimension, where competent assistant wastes emotional energy on employer, who either fails recognizing affection or deliberately ignores advances to maintain useful professional relationship without reciprocal obligation. Episodes exploring Smithers' attempts at romantic connection with other men typically conclude with recommitment to Burns, despite relationships' fundamental dysfunction. Professional competence distinguishes Smithers from typical Springfield incompetence, where his efficiency and loyalty make him indispensable to Burns' operations. He anticipates needs before articulation, executes unethical directives without moral hesitation, and generally enables Burns' worst impulses through reliable facilitation. This competence combined with devotion creates Stockholm Syndrome dynamic, where a capable individual subjugates himself to undeserving master whose casual cruelty Smithers accepts as employment condition. Harry Shearer voices both Burns and Smithers through distinct characterizations that prevent audience conflation despite single performer origin. Smithers' voice conveys efficiency and barely suppressed emotion, contrasting Burns' elderly tremor and aristocratic distance. This vocal differentiation permits their extensive dialogues without confusion while demonstrating Shearer's range across contrasting character types. Coming out narrative progresses across seasons, where initial coding yields to explicit acknowledgement without ever depicting successful romantic relationship. Smithers' sexuality becomes a running joke rather than developed character dimension, where episodes mention his orientation without exploring emotional consequences or providing relationship satisfaction. This treatment reflects television's evolution on LGBT representation, where acknowledgement precedes full characterization that dramatic exploration would require. Smithers' devotion enables Burns's villainy through efficient execution of harmful schemes that conscience might otherwise prevent. His complicity raises questions about assistant culpability, where following orders versus personal responsibility blur in workplace hierarchy that punishes insubordination while demanding ethical compromise. Episodes rarely address Smithers' moral responsibility for facilitating environmental destruction and worker exploitation that his efficiency makes possible. Springfield itches under animated violence as Itchy and Scratchy materializes across cartoon within cartoon format, where Mouse sadistically murders Cat through elaborate torture scenarios that satirize animation. Violence while entertaining Springfield's children beyond parental comfort zones. Itchy and Scratchy Show establishes during Season 2 as Krusty's program centerpiece, where brief animated segments depict graphic violence that realistic physics would never permit. The mouse Itchy functions as gleeful aggressor whose creative murder methods target Cat Scratchy in perpetual victim role that reverses expected predator-prey dynamics for comedic effect. Violence extremity escalates across franchise, where decapitations, explosions, dismemberments, and various graphic deaths occur with cartoon physics that negate realistic consequence. Blood sprays excessively. Screams echo. Yet each segment resets with Scratchy, restored for next murder scenario. This format parodies Tom and Jerry and other classic cartoons whose violence sanitized brutality through implication, while Itchy and Scratchy makes explicit what family-friendly animation conceals through restraint. Poochie episode achieves meta-commentary, where network executives introduce hip dog character attempting demographic appeal through focus group-driven design that viewers immediately reject. Poochie's brief tenure and ignominious retirement satirize television's cynical attempts at relevance through calculated coolness that organic character development surpasses. The episode's explicit discussion of animation production, network interference, and audience expectations breaks fourth wall while maintaining narrative frame where Springfield residents debate television quality, mirroring real-world Simpson fans' franchise investment. Bart and Lisa's devotion to Itchy and Scratchy mirrors real children's cartoon consumption, where parental attempts at limiting exposure fail against cultural ubiquity and peer pressure that makes viewership social necessity. Marge's brief censorship campaign following Maggie's violent imitation creates a moral panic storyline that resolves through free speech defense and parental responsibility assertion that shifts burden from content creators to household supervision. Animation style within Itchy and Scratchy segments maintains crude aesthetic distinguishing show within show from Simpsons' primary animation through deliberately simplified character designs and limited motion that evokes early cartoon era. This visual distinction signals meta-commentary, where Springfield residents watch animation that acknowledges their own animated existence, without characters recognizing fundamental ontological similarity. Writers' room scenes occasionally depict Itchy and Scratchy production, where animation staff debate creative directions and network demands that mirror Simpsons' own production realities. These meta moments permit commentary on television industry that direct address would preclude, where fictional shows struggles allegorize real challenges facing The Simpsons across decades. International Itchy and Scratchy variations appear during episodes set abroad, where different nations produce localized versions reflecting cultural sensibilities. Japanese Itchy and Scratchy incorporates anime aesthetics. European versions modify violence levels. These variations satirize globalization and cultural adaptation, where American exports undergo transformation for local markets that complicate simple cultural imperialism narratives. Merchandise proliferation within Springfield mirrors real Simpsons commercialization, where itchy and scratchy products saturate consumer market despite or because of violent content. Toys, clothing, and video games monetize cartoon violence that parental concern groups condemn, while children's enthusiasm sustains profitable enterprise. This contradiction satirizes American consumer culture, where moral objections coexist with commercial exploitation. Duff Beer materializes under Springfield consumption as Homer's beverage choice, where indistinguishable variants, Duff, Duff Light, and Duff Dry emerge from identical pipes, satirizing beer marketing through brand differentiation without meaningful product distinction. Duff Beer establishes during Season 2 as Springfield's dominant alcoholic beverage whose ubiquitous presence at Moe's Tavern, sporting events, and home refrigerators demonstrates cultural centrality in working-class male socialization. Homer's consumption reaches alcoholic proportions, where multiple daily six-packs fuel behavioral problems that episodes treat, comically without serious addiction exploration, until later seasons attempt addressing substance abuse through dramatic lens. Duffman emerges as a corporate mascot, whose exaggerated masculinity and catchphrase, "Oh yeah," punctuate promotional appearances at Springfield events. The character satirizes beer marketing's appeal to masculine identity, where spokesperson embodies idealized consumer that advertising creates for aspiration and identification. Duffman's apparent death and replacement with identical spokesperson reveals corporate interchangeability, where individual performers vanish beneath brand identity that continues regardless of specific actor. Duff Garden's theme park parodies Disney and Anheuser-Busch entertainment venues where alcohol branding extends into family destinations that normalize beer consumption through childhood exposure to corporate imagery and theme park association. Lisa's hallucinogenic experience from tainted water satirizes commercialized psychedelia, while Selma's negligent chaperone role demonstrates adult dysfunction that theme parks concentrate and expose. Seven Duff's characters reference Snow White's dwarfs through beer-themed variants whose names like Sleazy, Queasy, and Surly replace Disney's relatively innocent descriptors with alcohol consequence terminology. This parody demonstrates how corporate branding colonizes cultural references, where fairy tale transforms into marketing vehicle for substance that generates behavioral outcomes the original story never contemplated. Real-world Duff Beer. Products emerged in various international markets where entrepreneurs licensed or pirated Simpsons' intellectual property to sell actual beer under Duff branding. These products created legal complications, where fictional brands' association with problematic consumption and underage exposure made Fox Broadcasting reluctant to officially merchandise alcoholic beverages despite commercial opportunity. Eventually, sanctioned Duff products appeared in limited markets where legal restrictions and brand protection concerns permitted controlled release. Shelbyville looms across Springfield's borders as neighboring town rivalry, where cultural differences and historical feuds generate recurring conflicts through sports competitions, resource disputes, and mutual contempt that satirizes American regional antagonisms. Shelbyville establishes during early seasons as Springfield's geographic and cultural opposite, where town founding disputes over cousin marriage rights created permanent schism between communities. This absurd origin story parodies historical grievances, where trivial differences escalate into generational hostilities that participants maintain without remembering initial causes. Lemon Tree episode crystallizes rivalry through children's custody battle over fruit-bearing tree planted on disputed border, where property rights ambiguity permits conflict escalation into warfare that adult intervention barely contains. Bart's leadership during a Lemon Tree recovery demonstrates heroism within framework that broader perspective would recognize as fundamentally absurd, yet treated with complete sincerity by child participants. Geographic relationship between Springfield and Shelbyville varies across episodes, where immediate adjacency permitting easy crossing shifts to significant distance, requiring deliberate travel depending on plot requirements. This inconsistency mirrors Springfield's internal geographic ambiguity, where spatial relationships serve narrative needs rather than coherent mapping that realistic world building would demand. Cultural differences between communities remain largely symbolic, where Shelbyville residents appear identical to Springfield population despite mutual insistence on fundamental distinction. This satirizes in-group, out-group psychology, where minimal actual difference supports extensive identity construction
around arbitrary boundaries that social cohesion requires for group solidarity against external other. Springfield Elementary's second grade classroom illuminates under fluorescent panels as Lisa Simpson assumes her saxophone, where intellectual isolation and moral consciousness materialize through 8-year-old perspective that questions authority, challenges injustice, and navigates childhood genius amid peers whose concerns rarely extend beyond immediate gratification. Lisa Simpson establishes during Season 1 as family's intellectual and moral center, whose second grade placement belies capabilities exceeding
Springfield Elementary's educational capacity. Her saxophone playing provides artistic outlet, connecting her to Bleeding Gums Murphy's jazz mentorship that episodes explore through musical bonding, transcending age and racial barriers that Springfield's casual segregation typically maintains. Vegetarianism adoption. During Season 7's Lisa the Vegetarian marks character-defining choice, where moral conviction overrides family tradition and social convenience. Her refusal to consume meat creates conflict with Homer, whose backyard barbecue she sabotages through pig roast destruction that escalates family tension until Paul and Linda McCartney guest appearance facilitates reconciliation through validation that her ethical stance deserves respect despite minority status. This dietary choice persists across subsequent seasons, distinguishing Lisa from temporary character changes that sitcom resets typically erase. Buddhism conversion during Season 13 provides spiritual framework for her existing ethical orientation, where organized religion structure appeals to her intellectual need for systematic belief, while Buddhist philosophy's emphasis on compassion and mindfulness aligns with pre-existing values. This religious identity distinguishes her from family's casual Christianity while avoiding aggressive atheism that would alienate religious audiences. Episodes exploring her faith treat Buddhism respectfully through accurate representation that avoids Western exoticization, typical of American media's Eastern religion portrayal. Environmental activism emerges repeatedly, where Lisa champions ecological causes against corporate interests and public apathy that Springfield's institutional dysfunction enables. Her campaigns achieve temporary victories before reset mechanisms restore status quo that ongoing series format demands. These environmental storylines permit political commentary through child protagonists whose idealism highlights adult compromise and systemic resistance to necessary change that profit motives override. Saxophone skill reaches professional competency, where episodes depict her performing complex jazz standards that realistic 8-year-old abilities would never achieve. This musical prodigy status mirrors her academic excellence, where both intellectual and artistic gifts isolate her from peer relationships that shared mediocrity would facilitate. Bleeding Gums. Murphy's death during Season 6 eliminates her primary mentor, creating loss that subsequent episodes reference through Murphy's legacy and spiritual guidance that jazz music channels. Political consciousness manifests through liberal positions on social issues, where Lisa advocates for feminism, civil rights, and progressive causes that episodes present sympathetically while acknowledging their electoral weakness in Springfield's conservative-leaning population. Her student presidency campaigns, protest organizing, and awareness-raising activities demonstrate political engagement that most children lack, while satirizing adult activism's limited effectiveness against entrenched power structures. Depression episodes explore Lisa's mental health through childhood lens, where existential despair and social isolation create genuine suffering the comedy format struggles containing without tonal contradiction. Moaning Lisa from Season 1 depicts suicidal ideation that Bleeding Gums Murphy's intervention addresses through musical expression and emotional validation. These darker storylines demonstrate character depth beyond simple smart kid archetype, where intellectual gifts create burden alongside advantage. Unrequited crushes accumulate across seasons, where romantic interest in Nelson, environmental activists, and substitute teachers demonstrate emotional vulnerability beneath intellectual confidence. These relationships typically end in disappointment, reinforcing her isolation, while providing growth opportunities where emotional intelligence develops alongside academic achievement. Ralph Wiggum's attachment to her creates uncomfortable dynamic, where his intellectual disabilities and sincere affection generate sympathy, conflicting with her inability to reciprocate feelings toward unsuitable match. Future timeline episodes present varying Lisa outcomes where law career, presidency, and continued musical pursuit suggest multiple potential trajectories from childhood genius. These speculative futures permit narrative exploration of adult Lisa while maintaining present-day continuity where she remains perpetually 8 years old. Presidential Lisa in Bart to the Future presents optimistic outcome, where political aspirations achieve highest office, despite gender barriers and partisan opposition. Yeardley Smith voices Lisa with distinctive nasal quality and slight lisp that remains consistent across decades, where minimal vocal aging preserves character recognition. Smith's performance conveys intelligence and vulnerability through tonal variations that distinguish Lisa from stereotypical nerd characterizations, whose intelligence manifests through social awkwardness rather than moral clarity. Lisa functions as series conscience, where her moral positions provide ethical framework against which Springfield's dysfunction measures itself, establishing 8-year-old as franchise's most consistent advocate for justice, compassion, and systemic reform that adult characters dismiss or actively oppose. Springfield's living room shadows conceal Maggie Simpson, where pacifier-sucking silence and crawling observation materialize through infant perspective that absorbs family chaos, while contributing occasional heroism that episodes reveal through unexpected competence, contradicting baby helplessness assumptions. Maggie Simpson establishes during Tracy Ullman shorts as family's youngest member, whose infancy provides visual gag opportunities and occasional plot catalyst through baby-related scenarios. Her perpetual infant status across 35 years creates franchise's most extreme aging suspension, where character remains frozen at approximately 1 year old despite decades passing in real-world time. Silence defines Maggie's characterization, where absence of dialogue permits visual storytelling and action-based comedy that verbal characters cannot access. Her pacifier sucking creates iconic visual signature alongside starfish hair that distinguishes her silhouette. Occasional pacifier removal signals serious moments where baby's unvoiced thoughts presumably form behind observant eyes that episodes suggest comprehend more than infant cognition would permit. Elizabeth Taylor voices single word during Season 4's Lisa's First Word, where Maggie's daddy provides emotional climax, revealing her capacity for speech while choosing silence as preferred mode. Who Shot Mr. Burns' resolution reveals Maggie as shooter through accidental weapon discharge when Burns attempts stealing her candy. This twist subverts mystery format, where audience suspects characters with motives and agency, while actual culprit lacks both through mechanical accident rather than intentional violence. The revelation demonstrates how Maggie's infant status creates narrative possibilities, where her actions receive interpretation through innocence that adult equivalent would never permit. Heroic moments accumulate where Maggie rescues family members from danger through baby actions that physics would normally prevent. She saves Homer from drowning, protects him from mobsters, and generally demonstrates competence exceeding her apparent capabilities. These superhero baby scenarios create absurdist comedy where infant limitations disappear when plot requires heroic intervention that realistic babies cannot provide. Daycare episodes explore Maggie's peer relationships at Ayn Rand's School for Tots, where authoritarian administration and dystopian childhood environment satirize institutional daycare through exaggerated control and surveillance. Her adversarial relationship with Unibrow Baby creates recurring conflict where pacifier theft and territory disputes generate wordless warfare. These segments demonstrate Maggie's personality through action and expression, where dialogue absence necessitates purely visual characterization. Prodigy hints emerge occasionally where Maggie demonstrates abilities suggesting genius-level intelligence that her infant status conceals. Musical talent, problem-solving capacity, and perceptual awareness exceed developmental norms, creating impression that Simpson children's intellectual gifts extend to youngest member despite her inability to communicate discoveries verbally. These moments remain ambiguous, where interpretation vacillates between baby luck and genuine competence, depending on viewer perspective. Scanner price gag during opening credits shows Maggie ringing up as $847.63, reflecting actual average monthly cost of infant care during 1989 when the show premiered. This background joke embeds economic commentary about childcare expenses that working families face, demonstrating how throwaway gags carry satirical weight through specific numerical reference to real-world financial burden. Future timeline episodes occasionally depict adult Maggie where musical career or other professional success suggests positive outcome from childhood that present-day infancy prevents exploring. These flash-forward scenarios permit narrative experimentation while maintaining current timeline suspension, where Maggie never ages beyond crawling stage that defines her character limitations and opportunities. Maggie functions as series wildcard, where her silence and apparent helplessness conceal agency that emerges during crisis moments, establishing infant observer whose comprehension exceeds expression, permitting unexpected narrative interventions when episodes require baby-generated solutions. Springfield beauty salon mirrors conceal Marge Simpson's hair secrets, where towering blue sculpture rises through structural engineering that defies gravitational physics while concealing objects, spaces, and forgotten memories within impossible interior volume. Marge's hair establishes during Tracy Ullman shorts as distinctive visual signature, whose height and color create instant recognition across silhouettes and distant shots. The beehive style towers several feet above her head through architectural feat that realistic hair physics cannot explain, requiring cartoon logic that episodes occasionally acknowledge through structural glimpses during grooming or damage scenarios. Blue color origins receive conflicting explanations, where some episodes suggest natural blue hair, while others depict dye maintenance required for color preservation. Season 7's Fear of Flying reveals Marge's natural color matches brown hair visible in childhood flashbacks, establishing blue as artificial choice requiring regular salon visits for maintenance. This contradiction demonstrates franchise's selective continuity, where convenient explanations override established canon when comedy opportunities emerge. Interior storage capacity expands impossibly where objects disappear into hair structure, including money, secrets, and traumatic memories that episodes retrieve through discovery or confession scenarios. The hair functions as physical manifestation of Marge's hidden depths, where surface appearance conceals complexity that domestic role typically submerges. Some episodes depict hollow spaces within the structure where cameras navigate impossible interior geography that external dimensions cannot accommodate. Hair height variations occur across episodes, where different shots render the beehive at inconsistent heights, ranging from modest elevation to towering construction exceeding doorframe clearance. These inconsistencies stem from animation practicality, where framing requirements override strict dimensional consistency that realistic continuity would demand. Animators adjust hair height to fit compositions where extreme towers would extend beyond frame boundaries. Removal scenarios reveal skull deformation underneath, where hair's weight and constant elevation create cranial reshaping that one episode explores through medical examination. This grotesque reveal demonstrates a physical consequence of impossible hairstyle, where cartoon physics surrender momentarily to anatomical reality before reasserting comfortable fiction. Marge's reluctance to remove her hair stems from this deformation alongside identity crisis, where self-image integrates styling that removal threatens destabilizing. Cultural significance extends beyond franchise, where Marge's hair achieves iconic status in American popular culture, representing suburban motherhood and domesticity through instantly recognizable visual shorthand. Countless parodies, references, and homages deploy the blue tower signaling Simpsons' connection without requiring additional context. This iconography demonstrates how animated characters transcend source material, becoming cultural symbols whose meaning extends beyond narrative origin. Julie Kavner's vocal performance ages noticeably across decades, where Marge's rasp intensifies into strained delivery that physical toll manifests through decades of character maintenance. Early seasons present smoother voice that hardens into gravelly texture, as Kavner's vocal cords endure prolonged strain from unnatural character delivery. This aging adds unintended texture, where Marge's weariness manifests sonically through performers' physical limitations. Hair symbolizes Marge's containment of family chaos, where her role absorbing dysfunction and maintaining domestic stability manifests through architectural feat, defying collapse despite accumulated burden. The structure's persistence despite impossible engineering mirrors her character's resilience through decades of Homer's incompetence, children's dysfunction, and societal dismissal of domestic labor that her hair physically represents through Blue Tower's stubborn maintenance. Animation cells dissolve across production eras as crude, Klasky Kasupo outlines yield to film Roman smoothness, before digital rendering eliminates traditional cell animation entirely, transforming Springfield's visual identity through technological evolution that preserves character recognition while modernizing aesthetic presentation. Early Ullman shorts demonstrate intentionally crude animation, where thick black outlines, limited motion, and minimal background detail create a raw aesthetic that Groening's original sketches demand through rapid production timelines
and limited budgets. This roughness distinguishes initial episodes from theatrical animation polish that audiences associate with Disney features, establishing television animation's distinct identity through visible economy. Season 1 maintains Ullman's crude foundations while expanding detail and smoothing motion through
increased budgets and extended production schedules. Klasky Kasopo animation displays characteristic imperfections where off-model frames, inconsistent character heights, and jerky motion create organic texture that digital animation subsequently eliminates. Background paintings demonstrate limited detail where Springfield locations receive minimal rendering beyond essential elements that scene staging requires. Color palettes remain bright but unsophisticated, where flat tones dominate without subtle gradations that later digital coloring permits. Film Roman transition during Season 4 marks significant quality improvement, where character designs standardize, motion smooths, and background details accumulate without dramatic stylistic departure that would alienate existing audiences. The studio's Los Angeles location improves communication between writing and animation departments, where previous South Korean overseas production created feedback delays complicating quality control. Character model sheets become more detailed, ensuring consistent appearance across episodes and animation teams. These refinements polish the show's visual presentation while maintaining core aesthetic identity that defines franchise recognition. Digital ink and paint adoption beginning Season 14 eliminates traditional animation cells entirely, where computer coloring replaces hand-painted transparencies that defined animation production since Medium's inception. This technological shift permits complex shading, subtle color gradations, and lighting effects impossible under analog constraints. Character designs maintain recognition through digital model libraries that preserve established features while benefiting from precision that hand-drawn animation variability prevented. Backgrounds achieve greater detail where digital painting tools facilitate complexity that traditional methods' time constraints limited. High-definition widescreen transition during Season 20 dramatically alters visual composition, where 16:9 aspect ratio replaces traditional 4:3 television format that defined the franchise's first 19 seasons. Frame width expands, requiring composition adjustments that fill additional horizontal space while maintaining character scale and visual balance. Some episodes crop vertical space to maintain character proportions, while others redesign compositions entirely for widescreen accommodation. This format shift generates fan controversy where purists argue lost vertical information compromises original artistic intent, while pragmatists accept industry evolution as inevitable necessity. Animation style modernization accelerates through digital era, where computer rendering enables camera movements, complex visual effects, and detailed simulations that traditional animation budgets prevented. 3D integration occasionally appears where computer-generated elements composite with 2D characters, creating hybrid aesthetic that some episodes exploit for specific visual gags while maintaining primarily flat animation style that defines franchise identity. These technological capabilities permit ambitious sequences that earlier seasons' production methods could never attempt. Color palette evolution demonstrates gradual saturation increases where early seasons' muted tones yield to brighter, more vibrant colors that high-definition display capabilities enhance. Yellow skin tones remain consistent, providing character recognition, continuity across production methodology transitions. Background colors gain complexity through digital gradients and lighting effects that create depth and atmosphere beyond flat analog coloring's capabilities. Couch gag evolution reflects animation, capability expansion, where simple sitting variations yield to elaborate sequences requiring significant production resources that guest directors exploit for experimental animation, showcasing techniques and styles beyond standard episode requirements. These opening segments function as technological demonstrations, where animation studios display capabilities that narrative episodes rarely fully utilize due to time and budget constraints that regular production faces. Animation quality debates parallel broader zombie Simpsons discourse, where some fans argue digital smoothness sacrifices organic texture that hand-drawn animation's imperfections provided. Others celebrate technical improvements that eliminate off-model frames and jerky motion that detracted from early seasons' viewing experience. These aesthetic preference discussions reflect broader animation industry transitions where digital production becomes standard, replacing traditional methods that defined medium's first century.
Overseas animation studio coordination persists across production eras where South Korean facilities render American storyboards, maintaining cost efficiencies that domestic animation production cannot match. This international production pipeline creates quality control challenges that improved communication technology gradually mitigates without eliminating cultural and linguistic barriers that complicate creative feedback. Writer rooms illuminate across franchise history as Golden Age architects assemble, where John Swartzwelder, Conan O'Brien, George Meyer, Greg Daniels, and numerous Harvard Lampoon alumni craft the show's most revered episodes amid peak creative collaboration that subsequent eras struggle replicating. Writing staff composition during seasons 3 through 8 represents unprecedented comedy talent concentration where future showrunners, best-selling authors, and late-night hosts collaborate on single animated sitcom, creating synergy that produces television's most literate and satirically sharp content. This Golden Age writing room establishes franchise's intellectual reputation through dense reference layers, philosophical depth, and satirical precision that casual comedy rarely attempts. John Swartzwelder achieves legendary status
through prolific output generating dozens of classic episodes from remote typewriter, where eccentric work habits and refusal to use computers create mythology around reclusive writer whose distinctive voice influences franchise's cynical undertones and absurdist humor. His episodes demonstrate consistent quality and memorable concepts where Homer's enemy, Rosebud, and countless others achieve classic status through sharp dialogue, tight plotting, and character insights that elevate sitcom premises into meaningful commentary. Swartzwelder's eventual departure creates a noticeable void where his specific sensibility disappears from later seasons, contributing to perceived quality decline. Conan O'Brien joins staff fresh from Harvard Lampoon and Saturday Night Live writing, where his 4-season tenure produces memorable episodes, including Marge versus the Monorail and New Kid on the Block before late-night television claims him for Tonight Show opportunity. His Harvard wit sharpens satirical edges, while musical theater background influences several song-heavy episodes that integrate music more ambitiously than typical sitcom scoring permits. O'Brien's later success demonstrates how Simpsons' writing room functions as comedy training ground, launching numerous careers beyond franchise boundaries. George Meyer serves as head writer and executive producer during Golden Age, where his dark sensibility and perfectionist standards elevate script quality through rigorous rewriting and joke density maximization. Meyer's influence on franchise tone proves substantial, where his cynicism and absurdist humor permeate episodes regardless of credited writer. His mentorship of younger staff members perpetuates writing room excellence through standards that subsequent eras relax as original talent disperses toward individual projects. Greg Daniels contributes classic episodes before leaving to develop King of the Hill and later The Office, where his sitcom expertise developed through Simpsons' apprenticeship informs future successes. His character-focused writing and emotional grounding balance franchise's satirical edge, preventing complete cynicism from overwhelming human connections that audiences require for sustained engagement. Daniels exemplifies how Simpsons functions as comedy graduate school where emerging talents develop skills before launching independent careers. Harvard Lampoon pipeline supplies disproportionate writer representation, where Ivy League humor magazine's alumni populate staff rooms bringing literary knowledge, political awareness, and highbrow cultural references that distinguish Simpsons from typical animated programming. This educational concentration creates intellectual density that rewards educated viewers, while maintaining accessibility through joke layering, where surface humor entertains casual audiences, while deeper references satisfy attentive viewing. The Harvard connection establishes franchise's reputation as smart comedy, where animation format conceals sophisticated content that live-action sitcoms rarely attempt. Writer room dynamics during Golden Age demonstrate collaborative excellence, where individual talents combine through collective revision and group pitching that improves initial drafts through multiple perspectives and comedic sensibilities. Table reads permit testing jokes through vocal delivery before animation commitment, where unsuccessful material receives replacement before production begins. This iterative process creates quality control that subsequent eras' compressed timelines compromise through reduced revision cycles. Departure patterns emerge post-Golden Age, where original staff members pursue showrunner opportunities, book deals, and independent projects that Simpsons' success enabled. Their collective exit creates talent vacuum that replacement writers struggle filling despite individual capabilities, where specific chemistry and shared sensibility cannot transfer to successor generation. This talent diaspora contributes to perceived quality decline, where new voices lack institutional memory and collaborative history that golden age excellence required. Writing room legends establish creative benchmarks that later seasons reference nostalgically, acknowledging golden age as franchise's creative peak, whose specific circumstances cannot replicate across personnel changes and industry evolution that transforms television comedy production. Springfield's borders dissolve across international territories as dubbed translations and cultural adaptations materialize through European, Asian, and Latin American broadcasts, where local voice actors replace American performers, and cultural references receive modification for regional comprehension that global distribution demands. International reception begins during early 1990s, where syndication expands beyond American markets into territories whose animation industries lack comparable primetime content aimed at adult audiences. Dubbed versions proliferate, where Spanish, French, German, Japanese, and dozens of other language tracks replace English dialogue while maintaining animation intact, aside from occasional text substitutions, where signs and written content require translation. Cultural reference adaptation creates translation challenges where American-specific jokes about politics, products, and regional dialects resist direct translation and requiring creative substitution that preserves humor while acknowledging different cultural contexts. Homer's employer shift from nuclear plant to donut factory in early Latin American dubs demonstrates radical adaptation, where translators deemed nuclear energy too sensitive for specific markets, fundamentally altering characters' employment context to avoid controversy. These adaptations generate inconsistencies where different markets present contradictory details that unified global fandom later confronts through internet discourse. Voice actor selection in foreign markets creates new celebrity associations, where local performers achieve recognition through Simpson character portrayal that American counterparts established. Some nations cast established actors whose existing fame transfers to characters. Others discover unknown talents whose voices become definitive for local audiences, creating dual canonicity, where American and international audiences associate different sonic identities with identical visual characters. Dan Castellaneta's Homer voice achieves international recognition, yet remains unknown to viewers who hear local replacement, whose distinct delivery creates separate performance tradition. German dubbing achieves particular fame for quality and consistency, where voice actors maintain roles across decades, creating stability that some argue surpasses American originals' occasional fill-in performers during contract disputes. France similarly develops devoted translation tradition, where cultural adaptation sophistication preserves satire while making Springfield recognizably French through reference substitution and dialogue modification that maintains spirit while altering specifics. These quality translations demonstrate how skilled localization enhances, rather than diminishes, source material through thoughtful adaptation, respecting both original intent and target audience needs. Japanese reception transforms the franchise into a cultural phenomenon, where The Simpsons achieves mainstream popularity despite anime dominance, creating expectation that Western animation cannot match domestic production quality or narrative sophistication. Springfield's satirical edge appeals to Japanese audiences seeking alternatives to conventional entertainment, while American setting provides exotic appeal that domestic content cannot generate. Merchandise proliferation in Japanese markets exceeds even American commercial saturation, where specialty stores dedicate entire sections to Simpsons products that collectors accumulate obsessively. Censorship varies dramatically across international markets, where conservative nations edit content removing sexual references, religious satire, and political commentary that liberal democracies permit broadcasting without modification. Middle Eastern broadcasts excise alcohol consumption scenes, where Moe's Tavern sequences disappear entirely or receive digital alteration, replacing beer with juice or soda that dialogue contradicts through drinking context. These censored versions create fragmented viewing experiences, where narrative continuity suffers from absent scenes whose removal damages episode coherence. United Kingdom reception positions. The Simpsons as American cultural import, whose satirical examination of United States appeals to British audiences, whose BBC comedy tradition prepares them for sophisticated animated content that American television typically reserves for live-action programming. Sky Broadcasting's exclusive rights create premium positioning, where cable, Subscription requirements limit accessibility compared to American free broadcast availability. This scarcity enhances cultural cachet, where The Simpsons functions as aspirational content signaling subscriber status. Latin American markets demonstrate particular enthusiasm, where The Simpsons achieves multi-generational appeal, transcending typical animated programming's child-focused demographics. Family viewing patterns persist, where parents and children watch together, creating shared cultural reference points that advertising exploits through cross-generational product marketing. Spanish dubbing traditions vary between European Spanish and Latin American Spanish, creating regional variations, where different translation choices generate debates about superior adaptation and quality. International longevity matches American persistence, where many markets maintain broadcast continuity across decades, creating global fan base, whose engagement sustains franchise commercial viability beyond domestic audience alone. Streaming era eliminates geographic distribution barriers, where Disney Plus provides worldwide access to complete episode libraries, permitting international audiences viewing options that broadcast scheduling previously constrained. This global accessibility transforms The Simpsons from American export into transnational cultural product, whose ownership no longer resides exclusively with originating nation. Yellow Family merchandise saturates retail channels as commercial licensing generates billions across toys, clothing, video games, and countless product categories, where Simpsons imagery converts childhood entertainment into revenue streams that dwarf television advertising, income-sustaining franchise profitability, independent of ratings performance. Merchandise explosion begins during Season 2, where Bart Simpson's countercultural appeal creates demand for unlicensed t-shirts that schools ban, creating publicity, cycle amplifying commercial value. Fox Broadcasting recognizes merchandising potential, where systematic licensing agreements replace chaotic bootleg market with controlled product lines that quality standards maintain while maximizing revenue extraction. Toy lines proliferate, where action figures, playsets, and collectibles target adult collectors rather than children whose parents purchased initial merchandise waves. Talking dolls replicate character catchphrases through pull-string mechanisms. Playsets recreate Springfield locations, where miniature 742 Evergreen Terrace permits imaginative play scenarios. These physical products extend franchise beyond television viewing into tactile engagement, where ownership creates ongoing relationship independent of broadcast schedule that episodic consumption requires. Video game adaptations span multiple console generations, where titles range from simple side-scrolling platformers to ambitious open-world explorations of Springfield geography that inconsistent source material resists mapping. The Simpsons. Hit and Run achieves cult status through Grand Theft Auto-inspired gameplay that permits free exploration of detailed Springfield recreation, where landmarks receive definitive spatial relationships that episodes never establish. This game canonizes geography through interactive necessity, where playable environment demands coherent layout that contradicts across television. Episodes receives arbitrary resolution for functional purposes. Clothing lines transform Simpsons imagery into fashion statements, where Bart Simpson shirts during early 1990s achieve ubiquity that contemporary observers struggle imagining. Underachiever and proud of it slogan appears on countless chests, despite or because of parental disapproval that media controversy amplifies. Later clothing lines target adult consumers, where ironic nostalgia drives purchases that childhood enthusiasm initiated decades prior. This multi-generational merchandising demonstrates franchises' unusual longevity, where same property appeals to both children discovering content fresh and adults revisiting childhood favorites. Publishing extensions include comic books, magazines, and guidebooks, where Matt Groening's original comics background facilitates adaptation into sequential art. The television animation format parallels through visual storytelling. Simpsons Comics launches in 1993, continuing through 2018, generating 245 issues that expand Springfield stories beyond television episode constraints. These publications permit narrative experimentation, where print medium's different economics allow creative risks that television's commercial pressures prevent. Some stories achieve quality rivaling television episodes, while others serve purely commercial purposes without creative ambition beyond product generation. LEGO Collaboration produces building sets recreating Springfield locations through interconnected bricks, where modular construction permits customization that fixed toys cannot accommodate. The Simpsons house sets sell successfully, demonstrating adult collector market where sophisticated building experience justifies premium pricing,
that children's pocket money cannot afford. These collaborations extend franchise into unexpected product categories, where brand recognition opens opportunities that original merchandising strategies never anticipated. Bootleg merchandise persists alongside official products, where unlicensed manufacturers exploit copyright enforcement difficulties across international jurisdictions. Some markets flood with counterfeit goods whose quality varies from competent imitation to hilariously incompetent approximation, where characters barely resemble source material yet trade on name recognition. Fox Broadcasting pursues legal action against major violators, while accepting minor infringements inevitability, where enforcement costs exceed potential recovery from small-scale operations. Merchandise Empire's commercial dominance sustains franchise operations,
where licensing revenues exceed television advertising income, transforming The Simpsons from entertainment product into intellectual property portfolio, whose value derives from brand recognition rather than creative output that branding monetizes. Universal Studios theme parks illuminate under Florida and California, sunshine as Springfield recreations materialize through detailed sets where Moe's Tavern, Crusty Burger, and Duff Brewery serve actual food and beverages, transforming animated locations into physical destinations that visitors photograph and consume within creating immersive experience that television viewing cannot provide. Theme park integration begins in 2008 when Universal Orlando opens the Simpsons ride, replacing Back to the Future, attraction with simulator experience, where riders join Simpson family on chaotic adventure through Krustyland. Ride technology utilizes motion simulators synchronized with projected animation, creating illusion of physical movement through virtual environment, where characters interact with guests during queue entertainment and post-ride areas. Springfield, USA. Expansion in 2013 constructs entire themed land surrounding the ride, where architectural facades recreate animated buildings through forced perspective and detailed density that photographs convincingly despite obvious artifice. Moe's Tavern serves Duff Beer to adult guests, where alcoholic beverage availability distinguishes Universal's treatment from Disney's family-friendly restrictions. Crusty Burger operates as functional restaurant, where menu items reference show jokes through naming conventions while serving standard theme park fare that profit margins demand. Quickie Mart merchandise shop sells exclusive products unavailable elsewhere, creating collectible market that dedicated fans pursue. California installation at Universal Studios Hollywood opens in 2015, replicating Florida success through similar attraction suite adapted to different park layout and guest demographics. Bicoastal presence expands franchise's physical footprint, where theme park visits constitute pilgrimages for devoted fans seeking tangible connection to animated property whose television existence remains fundamentally ephemeral. Photo opportunities proliferate, where character meet and greets permit interactions with costume performers portraying Homer, Marge, Bart, and Lisa, despite animation medium rendering such encounters inherently artificial through human bodies approximating impossible cartoon proportions. Food and beverage offerings generate substantial revenue, where captive park audiences pay premium prices for themed dining experiences. Flaming Moe's non-alcoholic beverage provides family-friendly option whose orange coloring and dry ice fog create visual spectacle. Lard Lad Donuts serves oversized pastries, referencing Springfield's fictional bakery. These culinary implementations transform throwaway show jokes into actual consumable products whose existence validates fictional references through commercial realization. Ride Queue Entertainment demonstrates Universal's attention to detail, where monitors display original animated content, featuring characters acknowledging guests' theme park presence through fourth wall breaking dialogue. Crusty welcomes visitors to his park while warning about safety regulations and ride restrictions through characteristically inappropriate commentary. These queue videos prevent boredom during wait times while extending narrative immersion beyond ride's core experience into surrounding infrastructure that traditional attractions treat as purely functional. International expansion remains limited, where Orlando and Hollywood installations serve American market primarily despite international visitors, constituting significant attendance portion. Potential European or Asian Springfield lands face licensing complications and cultural translation challenges, where American-specific references resist adaptation for foreign audiences whose Simpsons familiarity varies regionally. Universal's global theme park portfolio continues expanding without additional Springfield zones, suggesting market saturation or strategic prioritization of properties with broader international appeal. Theme park presence validates franchise's cultural penetration, where physical space dedication demonstrates commercial value exceeding typical media property whose exploitation remains primarily licensing-based without substantial capital investment in permanent installations. Springfield's persistence in Universal's long-term park planning indicates confidence in property's enduring appeal, sustaining guest traffic that attraction development costs require justifying through projected decades of operation. Simpsons Comics materializes across comic shop racks as sequential art extension, where Matt Groening's original cartooning background facilitates medium adaptation that television animation format already parallels through visual storytelling mechanics that both industries share despite distinct production methodologies. Comics publication launches in 1993 through Bongo Comics Group, where Groening establishes imprint specifically for Simpsons-related publishing that maintains creative control, independent from television production's network interference. Monthly series continues through 2018, generating 245 issues that expand Springfield stories beyond television episode constraints, where page-based narrative permits different pacing and visual experimentation than broadcast format allows. Stories range from simple gag strips replicating television's episodic humor to elaborate multi-issue arcs exploring scenarios that television production budgets or runtime limitations prevent. Some narratives achieve quality rivaling television episodes through strong writing and artwork that captures character essence through line work and composition. Others serve purely commercial purposes without creative ambition beyond product generation that maintains publishing schedule when inspiration lapses. This quality variation mirrors television episodes' uneven excellence, where hit or miss ratios remain consistent across media formats. Futurama crossover comics exploit both properties' shared creator and production company, where Springfield residents interact with Planet Express crew through temporal anomalies and dimensional portals that narrative convenience demands. These crossovers demonstrate franchise flexibility, where distinct properties integrate through science fiction premises that separate series' internal logic permits. Fan enthusiasm for crossover content validates commercial decisions, where combining properties attracts both fan bases, creating synergistic sales that individual titles alone cannot achieve. Bartman's superhero parody generates dedicated stories where Bart's Batman-inspired alter ego receives narrative spotlight beyond television episodes' occasional references. These stories permit genre parody that television format constraints limit, where full superhero narrative conventions receive detailed examination through sequential art that comic medium naturally accommodates. Radioactive Man similarly receives dedicated titles where Springfield's fictional superhero exists as actual comic within comic, creating recursive meta-commentary about superhero publishing industry. European album editions repackage American monthly comics into hardcover collections, where Franco-Belgian publishing traditions demand prestige format that American pamphlet comics lack. These albums achieve mainstream bookstore distribution that American comic shops' niche market cannot provide, expanding readership beyond dedicated comic fans into casual consumers whose bookstore browsing encounters. Simpsons collections alongside traditional literature. This format legitimacy grants comics cultural respect that American publishing's disposable monthly format prevents. Treehouse of Horror comics extend Halloween specials' horror anthology format into print, where macabre stories and graphic content exceed television's broadcast standards, creating darker tone that older readers appreciate. These special editions appear annually, maintaining tradition that television established while exploiting comics medium's relaxed content restrictions that television censorship prevents. Gore, sexuality, and explicit violence appear in moderation, creating adult-oriented content that children's medium occasionally accommodates through specialty imprints. Licensed merchandise comics appear through various publishers, where Simpsons imagery decorates covers and interior pages without substantial narrative content beyond brand exploitation. These products serve gift market, where non-fans purchase Simpsons-branded items for fans whose enthusiasm retailers assume extends to any product bearing familiar yellow faces. Quality varies from legitimate artistic effort to cynical cash grabs, where licensing approval alone justifies publication despite minimal creative merit. Comic Series 2018 cancellation reflects changing media landscape, where digital comics, trade paperback collections, and declining comic shop retail infrastructure undermine monthly series viability. Final issue marks ending for 25-year publishing run that maintained consistent presence across quarter century, despite television franchises' vastly greater cultural prominence. Archives preserve complete run where digital availability ensures perpetual accessibility that physical scarcity threatened when print publications disappeared from active distribution. Emmy Awards accumulate across decades as Outstanding Animated Program category dominates, where The Simpsons wins, repeatedly establishing animated programming's viability for serious critical recognition that Academy historically denied through cartoons' perceived children's medium limitation. First Emmy win in 1990 validates primetime animation for adult audiences, where Outstanding Animated Program category's inaugural year grants The Simpsons immediate recognition that subsequent wins reinforce across multiple seasons. This early validation establishes precedent, where animation receives serious consideration alongside live-action programming that Emmy voters traditionally favored exclusively. Outstanding voice-over performance category additions permit individual actor recognition, where Dan Castellaneta, Hank Azaria, and Julie Kavner receive nominations acknowledging their contributions as distinct from collective ensemble achievement. Kelsey Grammer wins multiple times for Sideshow Bob performances, demonstrating guest voice work's recognition value, where recurring villain appearances generate Emmy attention despite limited episode presence. These voice acting awards legitimize animation performance as distinct discipline, requiring specific skills that live-action acting cannot fully translate. Writing and directing Emmy nominations accumulate, where individual episode achievements receive recognition separate from series-level awards. Al Jean, Mike Rice, and various staff writers collect trophies across Golden Age seasons, where episode scripts quality merits acknowledgement beyond animation category constraints. Directing awards remain rare, where animation's collaborative production process obscures individual director contributions that live-action auteur theory celebrates. Yet, occasional recognition validates creative vision required coordinating complex animated storytelling. Peabody Award in 1997 grants cultural legitimacy beyond industry recognition, where journalism and broadcasting's most prestigious honor acknowledges The Simpsons' satirical commentary merits serious consideration as cultural critique rather than mere entertainment. This outside validation from non-television industry organization demonstrates franchise's impact beyond commercial success or popular entertainment into substantive social commentary that academic and critical establishments respect. Annie Awards dominate animation-specific recognition, where industry organization celebrates technical and creative achievements that mainstream Emmy voters cannot adequately assess. Outstanding Achievement Awards proliferate across categories including character animation, character design, directing, writing, and voice acting, where specialized knowledge permits nuanced evaluation that generalist Emmy voters lack. These industry-specific honors validate technical excellence that broader awards animation ghetto prevents fully recognizing. Writers Guild of America Awards acknowledge script quality, where guild members' peer evaluation grants professional validation distinct from critical or popular reception. Multiple wins across franchise history demonstrate consistent writing excellence that guild standards measure through craft evaluation, rather than commercial success or cultural impact metrics. These professional organization awards carry particular weight, where fellow practitioners' recognition indicates technical mastery beyond layperson appreciation. Golden Globe nominations accumulate without wins, where Hollywood Foreign Press Association acknowledges The Simpsons' cultural significance through repeated recognition that never culminates in actual trophy. This pattern reflects television animation's continued marginal status, where acknowledgement through nomination suffices without full equality with live-action prestigious programming. The Simpsons movie's 2008 nomination for Best Animated Feature Film demonstrates theatrical expansion's distinct recognition pathway, where animated features receive separate consideration from general film categories. Guinness World Records catalog franchise achievements, where empirical measurements validate cultural impact through quantifiable metrics. Longest-running American sitcom, longest-running American animated program, most guest stars featured in television series, and numerous other categorical records accumulate across franchise history, where longevity and production volume generate superlatives that official documentation preserves. These records function as objective validation, where subjective quality debates yield to undeniable numerical superiority in specific measurable categories. Star on Hollywood Walk of Fame unveiling in 2000 grants permanent physical recognition, where sidewalk installation acknowledges cultural contribution
through tourist destination status. This honor places The Simpsons among entertainment industry legends whose Walk of Fame presence constitutes canonical greatness that cultural memory preserves beyond active career duration. Ceremony attendance demonstrates franchise's continued relevance, where cast members and creators gather for public celebration that media coverage amplifies. Awards legacy establishes The Simpsons as critically acclaimed alongside commercially successful ware industry.
Recognition validates popular entertainment's artistic merit, distinguishing franchise from disposable content through honors that cultural gatekeepers grant, acknowledging substantive achievement beyond profit generation. Springfield's yellow residents permeate American consciousness across decades as cultural touchstone, whose references circulate through language, humor, and visual iconography that transcends franchise boundaries, becoming shorthand for specific concepts and situations that Simpsons episodes originally explored, through satirical narratives now invoked without source citation. Cultural impact synthesis requires examining how animated sitcom transforms from entertainment product into fundamental component of American identity, whose influence shapes a subsequent media, political discourse, and generational worldview formation that franchise existence fundamentally altered. Language infiltration occurs where Simpsons originated phrases enter common usage, divorced from source context, where speakers deploy terminology without recognizing television origin. Doe enters Oxford English Dictionary in 2001, legitimizing Homer's frustrated grunt as actual word whose meaning dictionaries formalize through definition and usage guidance. Embiggen and Cromulent achieve similar dictionary recognition, where joke words mocking pretentious vocabulary become actual vocabulary through ironic adoption that transforms satire into reality. These linguistic contributions demonstrate how fictional dialogue escapes containment, becoming actual communication tools that language evolution incorporates. Political discourse adopts Simpsons references where candidates and commentators invoke Springfield scenarios illustrating policy positions or opponent criticisms through shared cultural touchstones that audiences immediately recognize. Politicians appearing on the show seek youth demographic appeal where guest voice roles signal cultural relevance and humor appreciation that voters reward. Campaign advertisements occasionally parody Simpson style where candidates present policy positions through animated format that franchise popularized. This political integration demonstrates franchise's penetration into serious discourse, where entertainment product provides vocabulary for democratic participation. Subsequent animation owes substantial debt, where prime-time, adult-oriented cartoons proliferate following The Simpsons' success validation. Family Guy, South Park, Bob's Burgers, and countless imitators exploit market that The Simpsons created through proving animated programming's viability beyond children's entertainment. Some successors acknowledge influence explicitly, while others demonstrate inherited conventions through similar family structures, satirical approaches, and episodic formats that The Simpsons established as template. This generative impact positions franchise as genre founder whose innovations subsequent productions normalize without. Acknowledging revolutionary origin. Academic scholarship examines The Simpsons as cultural text worthy of serious analysis, where philosophy, sociology, political science, and media studies scholars publish books and articles exploring franchise themes, satirical strategies, and cultural significance. Multiple edited volumes compile academic essays, analyzing specific aspects where specialized knowledge reveals depths that casual viewing misses. University courses teach The Simpsons as legitimate curriculum content, where students examine episodes through critical frameworks that entertainment products rarely receive. This intellectual legitimacy grants franchise respect beyond popular success into scholarly recognition as worthy research subject. Generational identity formation incorporates The Simpsons, where millennials particularly claim franchise as definitional childhood experience, whose influence shapes worldview development through satirical lens that subsequent cynicism inherits. Growing up with Simpsons instills critical perspective toward authority, institutions, and cultural norms that franchise consistently mocks through Springfield's dysfunctional systems. This formative influence creates generations whose default skepticism toward power structures derives partly from animated sitcoms' relentless, institutional critique absorbed during developmental years. Prediction mythology discussed previously demonstrates cultural obsession where audiences seek meaning beyond entertainment through retrospective pattern recognition that elevates coincidence into prophecy. This phenomenon reflects franchise's cultural centrality, where sufficient attention permits finding virtually anything within vast episode archive that 35 years accumulates. The eagerness to discover predictions reveals desire for franchise significance beyond comedy into supernatural foresight that rational analysis undermines, yet popular imagination sustains. Meme culture continuously mines franchise for reaction images, quotable dialogue, and scenario templates that social media circulation perpetuates across generations, discovering content through viral exposure rather than broadcast viewing. Steamed Hams discussed previously exemplifies this pattern, where obscure segments achieve widespread recognition through internet amplification that original broadcasts never generated. These memes extend franchise relevance beyond active viewership, where non-fans encounter Simpsons content through decontextualized references that platforms algorithmically distribute. Merchandise ubiquity discussed previously creates ambient brand presence, where Simpsons imagery saturates retail environments independent of active franchise engagement. This commercial omnipresence maintains cultural visibility where declining television ratings might otherwise indicate fading relevance. Brand recognition persists, where visual identity remains instantly recognizable decades after peak popularity, establishing permanent cultural fixture status that transcends temporary entertainment trends. International impact extends American cultural influence, where global audiences encounter United States through Springfield's satirical lens that both celebrates and criticizes American society. Foreign viewers learn American cultural references through Simpsons episodes whose explanatory context permits comprehension that direct exposure would resist. This soft power extends American cultural hegemony while simultaneously providing critical perspective that propaganda would suppress, creating complex relationship where entertainment simultaneously promotes and questions American values. Cultural impact synthesis reveals how single television program transforms media landscape, linguistic evolution, political discourse, academic inquiry, and generational identity formation through sustained excellence and commercial longevity that permits influence accumulation across decades, where most entertainment products achieve brief relevance before cultural memory discards them into obscurity that The Simpsons' persistence prevents. Springfield's creative vitality debates intensify across fan communities as zombie Simpsons terminology emerges describing post-Golden Age episodes whose perceived quality decline creates bifurcated franchise, where early excellence contrasts later mediocrity, generating discourse about when exactly the show died despite continued production that corpse metaphor invokes. Zombie Simpsons concept originates during mid-2000s, where dedicated fans increasingly expressed dissatisfaction with contemporary episodes whose writing, characterization, and satirical edge apparently deteriorate from Golden Age standards that seasons 3 through 8 established as quality benchmarks against which subsequent output suffers unfavorable comparison. Season demarcation debates generate endless discussion where fans argue precisely when quality decline commenced, with various seasons nominated as turning point between excellence and mediocrity. Season 9's Principal and the Pauper episode receives frequent citation as symbolic death, where character undermining revelation demonstrates creative bankruptcy, willing to sacrifice established canon for shock value. Season 10 emerges as common cutoff, where Mike Scully era's tonal shifts and increased celebrity focus mark departure from character-driven storytelling. Some generous assessments extend grace through Season 12 before declaring terminal decline. These debates demonstrate how subjective quality assessment generates passionate disagreement despite shared dissatisfaction with current output. Symptom identification catalogs perceived failures where specific creative decisions demonstrate decline. Jerk-ass Homer transformation, where character regresses from lovable incompetent into actively malicious antagonist whose cruelty alienates audience sympathy. Cartoon physics escalation, where realistic consequence yields to impossible survival from injuries that earlier episodes treated seriously. Plot contrivance increasing, where narrative convenience overrides character logic that Golden Age writing respected. Celebrity guest saturation, where famous voices dominate episodes that should center family dynamics. These symptoms accumulate, creating impression of fundamental creative exhaustion, where writers generate content without inspiration that original staff possessed. Defender perspectives argue quality remains consistent, where nostalgic bias inflates Golden Age reputation while dismissing contemporary episodes without fair evaluation. Later seasons contain excellent episodes that fan prejudice prevents appreciating through automatic dismissal based on production date rather than actual quality assessment. animation improvements, increased diversity representation, and topical relevance provide advantages that Golden Age episodes lack despite their superior writing. This defense acknowledges uneven quality while rejecting blanket condemnation that Zombie Simpsons framing imposes. Statistical analysis attempts objective quality measurement, where IMDb ratings, critic scores, and viewership data provide empirical evidence for subjective quality claims. Aggregated ratings demonstrate measurable decline, where average episode scores decrease across seasons, with Golden Age episodes clustering toward perfect scores while recent seasons receive mediocre evaluations. Viewership erosion reflects audience dissatisfaction, where millions abandon franchise across decades as quality perception deteriorates. These metrics validate decline narrative, while defenders note rating inflation, where Golden Age nostalgia artificially elevates older episodes, while contemporary bias depresses recent scores. Showrunner turnover contributes to inconsistency, where creative vision fragmentation occurs across leadership, changes that Golden Age stability avoided. Algene's extended tenure provides continuity, yet cannot replicate original staff's collective genius, where individual talent concentration created unsustainable excellence. New writers lack institutional memory and shared sensibility that Golden Age collaboration fostered, where Harvard Lampoon connections and comedy scene relationships created unique chemistry that hiring processes cannot deliberately recreate. Commercial imperatives override creative priorities, where network demands longer seasons, syndication considerations affect storytelling, and merchandise tie-ins influence content creation that artistic integrity would resist. These pressures intensify across decades, where franchises' commercial value grows while creative freedom contracts under corporate oversight that profitability maximizes. Golden Age enjoyed relative autonomy, where unproven show status permitted experimentation that established franchise cannot risk through audience alienation that shareholders punish. Zombie Simpsons debate ultimately reflects how extraordinary initial quality creates impossible standards that continued production cannot maintain, where franchise persistence guarantees decline from unsustainable peak that shorter-lived programs avoid through timely cancellation, preserving legacy that The Simpsons' longevity compromises. Springfield's animation cells flicker across decades, materializing under perpetual production schedules, where franchise persistence defies cancellation, despite ratings, erosion, and cultural consensus declaring creative death years prior, yet corporate incentives sustain indefinite renewal that transforms The Simpsons from television program into permanent institution, whose existence transcends quality considerations into commercial asset too, valuable abandoning, regardless of artistic justification for conclusion. Springfield's persistence requires examining why franchise continues when conventional wisdom suggests graceful retirement would preserve legacy that extended mediocrity tarnishes. Syndication value sustains production, where massive episode library generates perpetual revenue through global broadcasting rights that accumulate value as catalog expands. Each new season adds sellable content to archive whose worth appreciates through completeness that collection-minded broadcasters purchase. Disney Plus streaming amplifies this value, where comprehensive franchise access attracts subscribers seeking complete viewing experience that fragmented availability prevents. These distribution revenues exceed production costs, creating profitable enterprise, independent of declining broadcast ratings that traditional cancellation metrics emphasize. Brand recognition maintains commercial viability, where Simpsons imagery retains instant recognition that merchandise licensing exploits through product lines targeting nostalgic adults whose childhood fandom merchandise purchases sustain. Theme park attractions discussed previously demonstrate ongoing investment confidence, where Universal Studios commits substantial capital to permanent installations whose projected decades of operation assume continued franchise relevance. These alternative revenue streams dwarf television advertising income, making broadcast ratings increasingly irrelevant to cancellation decisions that profitability alone determines. Voice actor aging creates succession crisis, where primary cast members approach or exceed typical retirement age, yet continue performing characters whose perpetual youth their increasingly elderly voices strain maintaining. Dan Castellaneta at 67, Julie Kavner at 74, and other core performers face mortality that threatens franchise continuity when irreplaceable voices silent permanently. This demographic reality suggests eventual forced conclusion when death, rather than creative exhaustion, terminates production that commercial logic would otherwise perpetuate indefinitely.
Succession planning apparently absent, where recasting discussions remain taboo despite
inevitability that actuarial tables guarantee. Cultural institution status transforms franchise from entertainment product into American heritage, whose preservation feels obligatory regardless of current quality. The Simpsons represents multi-generational touchstone, whose references permeate language and consciousness, creating cultural infrastructure that cancellation would destabilize. This institutional permanence resembles Saturday Night Live's indefinite continuation, where a show's cultural role transcends individual episode quality into ongoing platform that tradition demands maintaining. Cancellation would signal cultural shift, acknowledging institutions' irrelevance that broadcasting companies resist through continued production that prevents admitting irreversible decline. Writer and animator employment sustains through franchise persistence, where hundreds of industry professionals derive livelihoods from production that cancellation would eliminate. Union considerations, corporate employment obligations, and simple human decency toward longtime employees create inertia, resisting cancellation when alternative projects could absorb displaced workers, but moral responsibility toward existing staff influences decisions beyond pure profitability calculation. This employment dimension adds ethical complexity to cancellation debates where abstract quality concerns confront concrete livelihood impacts. International audiences lag American decline, where global markets recently discovering franchise through streaming access demonstrate enthusiasm that domestic viewers exhausted years prior. These emerging markets justify continued production serving non-American audiences, whose delayed exposure creates commercial opportunity that American saturation eliminates. Disney's global streaming strategy positions The Simpsons as anchor content attracting international subscribers whose franchise discovery mimics American audiences' 1990s initial enthusiasm that ratings reflected before familiarity bred contempt. Fan devotion persists among dedicated viewers who continue enjoying contemporary episodes despite majority opinion condemning post-Golden Age output as inferior. These faithful fans deserve content serving their continued enthusiasm, where cancellation would abandon loyal audience whose minority status relative to departed viewers nonetheless represents substantial viewership that advertisers value. Market segmentation permits targeting devoted fan base, whose engagement metrics demonstrate value beyond raw viewership numbers that Nielsen ratings traditionally measured. Potential conclusion scenarios range from planned final season announcement, granting writers opportunity crafting satisfying ending to abrupt cancellation when key voice actor death forces production halt that preparation cannot prevent. Ideal scenario involves advance notice, permitting farewell season that narrative threads resolves while celebrating franchise legacy through retrospective elements that devoted fans appreciate. Likely scenario involves indefinite continuation until external force, voice actor death, corporate restructuring, catastrophic ratings collapse, imposes conclusion that creative choice never selected. Springfield's persistence reflects commercial imperatives, cultural inertia, and genuine audience affection combining to sustain franchise, whose continuation defies conventional wisdom, yet remains comprehensible through economic analysis that sentiment reinforces, ensuring yellow family populates television screens until external circumstances force conclusion that internal creative considerations cannot justify while profitability persists, and institutional permanence resists acknowledging mortality that even cartoon families ultimately face. When broadcast signals finally cease transmitting their animated existence into homes where generations discovered Springfield's satirical reflection of American life. That four-fingered hands gestured toward across 35 years of unbroken production that this documentation honors, through comprehensive lore examination, permitting sleep to claim listeners who drifted through Springfield's complete history one final time before consciousness surrenders to dreams where yellow skies and nuclear power plants fade into restful darkness. Springfield's documentation concludes here where 2 hours of animated lore accumulate into comprehensive archive chronicling Yellow Family's journey from crude Tracy Ullman sketches through 35 seasons of cultural persistence that transformed entertainment landscape and infiltrated American consciousness through satire, catchphrases, and perpetual dysfunction that mirrors audiences' own lives beneath cartoon exaggeration. Every couch gag cataloged, every character iteration examined, every prediction, controversy, and creative peak documented through methodical observation. The sleep content format demands where information density yields to atmospheric drift, permitting rest to claim consciousness gradually as Springfield's borders dissolve back into television static. The town persists beyond this documentation, where new episodes continue materializing, despite critical consensus declaring creative exhaustion years prior. Commercial imperatives sustaining production, that artistic justification abandoned, yet audiences somehow persist, watching despite, or perhaps because of familiarity that comfort provides when world outside Springfield grows increasingly chaotic and unfamiliar. Homer still works at the plant. Moe still pours beer. Bart still rides his skateboard through opening credits that reset perpetually, ensuring Springfield never ages, never changes fundamentally despite surface variations that decades accumulate into animation-style evolution, voice actor aging, and cultural references updating, while core dynamics persist, frozen in amber that syndication preserves across infinite rebroadcast cycles. These 2 hours traced. Complete lore, yet Springfield contains infinite additional details, where obsessive fans catalog background gags, freeze-frame jokes, and obscure references that comprehensive documentation could never exhaust without extending documentation toward its own perpetual production cycle mirroring franchise it examines. Somewhere, episodes still broadcast. Somewhere, merchandise still sells. Somewhere, new viewers discover Springfield for the first time, while longtime fans revisit favorite episodes through streaming platforms that ensure perpetual availability until consciousness or interest finally extinguishes whichever arrives first. Sleep claims those who drifted through this documentation, where Springfield's yellow skies fade into darkness behind closed eyelids and animated chaos yields to dreamless arrest that 2 hours of immersive lore facilitate through drowsy rhythm maintained across comprehensive examination that honored franchise through systematic cataloging rather than critical judgment, documenting what exists without declaring what should be, permitting Springfield to simply persist in consciousness one final time before night's quiet claims attention that daytime reserves for louder entertainments. The lore rests here. Springfield continues elsewhere. And sleep arrives when ready, carrying echoes of nuclear power plants, convenience stores, and couch gags into whatever dreams animated documentation inspires in minds that absorbed 2 hours of yellow family history, drifting slowly toward rest that format promised and delivery sustained through methodical accumulation, building toward this conclusion where documentation ends and sleep begins in boundaries that blur as consciousness releases its grip on Springfield's persistent existence, fading finally into restful silence.